Chapter 331. This is really strange. Xiaochen did not know that he had such great influence. Since that was the case, he would come back tomorrow. There was no need to worry about leaving the Dragon Phoenix Cauldron here. However, there was another matter that could be settled now. Xiaochen said, "It is settled, then. I still have some demonic cores with me. I wonder if Old Huang can help me appraise them and do some business." Old Huang smiled and said, "That is easy. Do you want to pawn them or sell them?" "Sell them." After Xiaochen spoke, he poured out 3 large piles of demonic cores from his universe ring. The largest pile was rank 4 demonic cores, the smallest was rank 5, and the smallest was rank 6. The smile on Old Huang's face immediately froze. He was speechless. This was the so-called demonic core. A rough count gave him more than 3,000 demonic cores. With such a large number, the victorious chief pawnshop's annual business was probably only this much. The waiter at the side was completely dumbfounded. He thought to himself, "Fortunately, I did not say anything to offend this person." When he thought about how he had been prepared to mock this person, he felt that he was really lucky. Xiaochen said, "Old Huang, what's wrong? Is the number too large?" Old Huang recovered his wits and sighed, "It's not large at all. I will call the other appraisers. We will definitely give young Master Yi a specific number within an hour." Xiaochen smiled and said, "There is no rush. It does not matter if I wait a little longer." After an hour, Old Huang walked over tiredly. He took out a stack of papers and said to Xiaochen, "Young Master Yi, the attributes of every demonic core have been appraised. All of them have a specific price tag. Take a look and see if there is anything you would like to add." Xiaochen received the stack of papers and looked at them carefully. He discovered that it was indeed as Old Huang said. Not only were the attributes of the demonic cores listed, even the corresponding demonic beasts were listed. Furthermore, the accuracy was almost 100%. Every demonic core had a valuation. Furthermore, the reason for the valuation was stated in detail. The appraiser of the victorious chief pawnshop was not simple at all. This was an eye-opener for Xiaochen, overturning some of Xiaochen's original concepts. For example, the demonic core of an inferior rank 4 demonic beast was valued even higher than a superior rank 5 demonic core. The reason was that the Heavenly Craft Manor had developed a new spirit weapon and was in urgent need of such demonic cores. There were many similar cases. The value of a demon core was not simply determined by its rank. This gave Xiaochen some inspiration. Finally, Xiaochen took a look at the total. All the demonic cores added together could be sold for 450,000 inferior grade spirit stones. When Xiaochen saw the inferior grade spirit stones, he frowned slightly. Honestly speaking, he did not have much use for inferior grade spirit stones. Right now, he could only use them as currency. There was no use for ordinary cultivation. At most, it could be used to quickly recover essence when one's essence was slightly depleted. If Xiaochen depleted too much, he could only use medial grade spirit stones. 1 medial grade spirit stone would not be enough. When Old Huang saw that something was wrong with Xiaochen's expression, he asked in a probing manner, "Young Master Yi, are you not satisfied with the price?" Xiaochen shook his head and said, "No, 450,000 inferior grade spirit stones is already a very high price. However, I was wondering if I could exchange it for medial grade spirit stones." When Old Huang heard this, he muttered in a low voice, "It is not impossible. However, young Master Yi needs to think this through. Although inferior grade spirit stones are no longer of much help to cultivators above medial grade martial saint, they are still the basic currency of the continent. There will not be any devaluation." What Old Huang said was not wrong. The auctions held in Shiha City also used inferior grade spirit stones as the starting point. There should not be any major changes in other places. Old Huang continued, "If you use inferior grade spirit stones to exchange for medial grade spirit stones, you will be at a great disadvantage. Young Master, you should think this through carefully before making a decision." Old Huang continued, if you use inferior grade spirit stones to exchange for medial grade spirit stones, you will be at a great disadvantage. Young master, you should think this through carefully before making a decision. At the auction in Shiha City, Xiaochen had suffered such a disadvantage. For the sake of purchasing secret treasures, he had no choice but to use medial grade spirit stones to exchange for inferior grade spirit stones. If he had prepared a sufficient amount of inferior grade spirit stones in advance, such a situation would not have happened. However, Xiaochen had an urgent need for medial grade spirit stones. He felt that they would be of great use in the future. Now that he had the opportunity, he had to exchange them for medial grade spirit stones. Xiaochen asked, "Name a number. How many medial grade spirit stones can these 450,000 inferior grade spirit stones be exchanged for?" Old Huang replied straightforwardly, "At most 3,000. This is a discounted price on the account that you are acquainted with Miss Feng. One medial grade spirit stone could be exchanged for 100 inferior grade spirit stones. If it was inferior grade spirit stones for medial grade spirit stones, or 200 inferior grade spirit stones for one medial grade spirit stone, one would be laughing up their sleeves." Hence, the price given by Old Huang was indeed a discounted price. Furthermore, it was much more than what Xiaochen had expected. Xiaochen put down the white paper that introduced the demonic core. He smiled and said, "In that case, many thanks to Old Huang. 3,000 medial grade spirit stones was a very large sum." Xiaochen had to go through many procedures before he could truly obtain it. Xiaochen waited for another 4 hours before he finally managed to obtain all 3,000 medial grade spirit stones. In addition to the 5,000-odd medial grade spirit stones in the universe ring, Xiaochen now had a total of 8,000 medial grade spirit stones. This was a horrifying amount of wealth. Xiaochen was more or less done with what he needed to do. All that was left was to wait until he saw Feng Feishue tomorrow. When Xiaochen pushed open the doors of the victorious chief pawn shop, the sky in the east was already turning bright. The light of dawn was about to break through the shackles of darkness. There were already some people on the streets. However, most of them were ordinary people doing business in the early days. There were no signs of cultivators. Xiaochen revealed a calm smile as he slowly walked to the inn he came from. His pace was neither fast nor slow. When he heard the various shouts of the ordinary people around him, his state of mind slowly calmed down. When Xiaochen arrived at the entrance of the inn, the light of dawn finally matched the night sky. A red sun appeared. Xiaochen stopped and looked up. The rising sun was as red as a pillar. However, it was not too hot. Only at this moment could an ordinary person look directly at the sun. Xiaochen entered deep thought. He was like this fiery morning sun. His future was bright, but he might not be able to truly emit the light of the blazing sun. However, it was filled with unknown factors. Since ancient times, there had been countless geniuses who died prematurely when the sun just rose, falling completely. The road ahead would be bumpy, he had to be careful. Just as Xiaochen was deep in thought, the waiter opened the doors of the inn. Xiaochen collected his thoughts and walked in under the waiter's astonished gaze. Strange, didn't this person not go out last night? Why did he come in again this morning? The waiter muttered as he looked at Xiaochen's back. After returning to his own room, Xiaochen washed up and went straight to his bed to cultivate. The Purple Thunder Divine Incantation had remained in the 5th layer for a long time. After the 3rd layer, it became increasingly difficult to cultivate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. However, with every layer, there would be a qualitative change in his strength. When he broke through to the 3rd layer, the Purple Thunder True Fire became the origin flame. When he broke through to the 4th layer, the might of the Purple Thunder True Fire increased by another level. The origin of thunder contained in it became purer and more condensed. Xiaochen did not know what kind of surprise he would receive when he broke through to the 5th layer. He hoped that when the time came, the amount and might of the Purple Thunder True Fire would improve by another level. Xiaochen cultivated all the way until dusk. Then, he slowly opened his eyes and withdrew his palm. He gathered all the purple electricity in the air due to his cultivation into his right hand, forming a ball of blazing purple flame. The purple flame slowly seeped into his palm and entered his body through the meridians in his arm. Finally, it gathered at the origin flame in his right eye. After not eating for a day, Xiaochen felt hungry. He prepared to go downstairs and have a feast. Dusk was always the most crowded and bustling time in any inn or restaurant. Xiaochen waited for a long time on the second floor before he found an empty table by the window. Have you heard? Something big happened in Dongming province. It could be said to have shaken the entire Great Qin nation. While waiting for the food to be served, the discussions of some cultivators reached Xiaochen's ears. Another person laughed. How big can it be? Is it even more shocking than Xiaochen's battle with the noble clans a year ago? Xiaochen, that's all in the past. That person hasn't appeared for a year. I'm guessing that with the large families chasing after him, he's either left Great Qin or is hiding in the wilderness, hiding his identity. In the current Great Qin nation, there is no place for him to stay. Dongming province, the royal courts, Shihe province, and Nanling province are all hunting him down. That's true. Tell us, what happened? Someone asked with great interest. That's true. The person who spoke first took a sip of wine and said, a month ago, Duanmuking gathered the outstanding talents of the various lands. I believe you all know about this. According to reliable sources, they gathered for a dragon phoenix cauldron left behind by the Firely sect. Furthermore, they actually found this cauldron. In the end, a nameless brat from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion defeated the outstanding talents of the various lands and snatched the cauldron back. Is that true? The Dragon Phoenix Cauldron is a legendary item. To think it actually appeared, the others exclaimed in astonishment. When Xiaochen heard this, he frowned slightly. He thought to himself, it looks like the Dragon Phoenix Cauldron is a hot potato. I will probably feel some pressure when I return to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Those people continued to chat, but Xiaochen had no interest in listening. After he finished his meal, he returned to his room to cultivate. Time passed very quickly as Xiaochen cultivated. When Xiaochen opened his eyes again, the sky had already turned dark. He opened the window and looked out. It was very dark outside, there were very few people walking on the streets. Xiaochen held his lunar shadow saber and silently leaped out, heading for the victorious chief pawn shop. He remembered that the last time he met Feng Feishue was in Dongming City as well. It seemed like the two of them had a special fate in Dongming City. Xiaochen executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art with all his might. In a short while, he arrived at the victorious chief pawn shop again. This time, it was different from last night. There was no strong aura staring at him. The moment Xiaochen walked up the bronze steps, the doors opened. Old Huang smiled from behind the doors. Young Master Yi, please follow me. Miss Feng has been waiting for a long time. Xiaochen nodded gently and followed Old Huang to the guest room on the top floor of the victorious chief pawn shop. When they arrived at the door, Old Huang tactfully left. Chapter 332. After calming himself down, Xiaochen gently pushed open the door. The instant the door opened, he immediately saw Feng Feishue, dressed in men's clothing, holding a folding fan in her hand. She seemed to be the same as before, without any changes. Her aura was the same as before. Her fine black hair was tied up, and the men's clothing made her pretty face look very different. She was elegant, and her aura was outstanding. After sensing for a while, Xiaochen discovered that Feng Feishue's cultivation was still at peak superior grade martial saint. This surprised him. Feng Feishue had a gentle smile on her face. When Xiaochen was sizing her up, she also carefully observed Xiaochen. When Feng Feishue saw Xiaochen again, she felt that his aura was even more reserved. Furthermore, there was an additional aura that she could not understand, making him seem somewhat mysterious. The two of them came to the table and sat across from each other. Feng Feishue picked up the teacups on the table and poured a cup of tea for Xiaochen. She smiled softly and said, "It has been a long time. Your strength has increased again. Congratulations." Xiaochen received the teacup and took a sip. Then, he continued the topic, you are the one that shocked me. After running around the continent, your cultivation is still higher than mine. Feng Feishue smiled faintly and poured herself a cup of tea. Then, she changed the topic, this is the first time you are in such a rush to look for me. I rushed over from the imperial capital overnight. Is something the matter? There were too many things Xiao Chen wanted to ask Feng Feishue. Now that she was in front of him, he did not know where to start. Xiao Chen put down the teacup and organized his thoughts before saying, I might have to leave the great Qin nation soon. A few months ago, you asked you to bring me to the imperial capital. Can you tell me why? If I can help you, I will do my best. However, if I leave the great Qin nation, I might not be able to return for some time. Feng Feishue smiled faintly and felt warmth in her heart. She did not expect that when Xiao Chen was preparing to leave the great Qin nation, he would still remember the promise he made to her. Indeed, with your strength, it would be good for you to go out and train. However, you do not have to worry about my promise. Even if you are at the ends of the earth, I will find you immediately, Feng Feishue said softly. It looked like Feng Feishue was still unwilling to tell him her secret. So be it, Xiao Chen did not force her. He continued asking, Cousin Yulan, how are things in the heavenly Qin school? When Feng Feishue heard Xiao Yulan's name, a complicated expression flashed in her eyes. She said, she received your flowing light flower and is currently cultivating with all her might. She is very strict with herself, and the talent she displayed is extremely high. Currently, one of the seniors in the heavenly Qin school has already accepted her as a disciple. Hearing that the other party was fine, Xiao Chen relaxed slightly. The two of them chatted for a long time before Xiao Chen mentioned the Dragon Phoenix Cauldron. Feng Feishue hesitated for a while before saying apologetically, the Feng clan does indeed have a method to refine secret treasures. However, only the clan head knows such a top-notch secret. I do not know it myself. This caused Xiao Chen to be somewhat surprised. However, when he thought about it, it was indeed so. If a clan really grasped the method to refine secret treasures, then the strength of the clan would definitely soar. Such an important secret was usually held in the hands of the clan head. Otherwise, if it was leaked, the consequences would be dire. As for whether there were other reasons, or if Feng Feishue had her own difficulties, Xiao Chen did not care. He did not like to force others. Furthermore, Feng Feishue had already helped him enough. Just the heaven-ranked movement technique, the blue dragon cloud soaring art, had saved his life several times at crucial moments. It was more valuable than a priceless treasure. What else was there to ask for? Feng Feishue said, I am really sorry about this. However, when you hand the Dragon Phoenix Cauldron over to the Feng clan, I can pay you daily. 10 medial-grade spirit stones every day, until you take the Dragon Phoenix Cauldron. Xiao Chen waved his hand and said, please don't say that. Just treat it as if it's in your Feng clan. To me, it would be a hot potato. To Xiao Chen, this was indeed the case. If he could store it in his universe ring, it would be fine. However, if he could not, it would be very inconvenient. The two of them chatted for a long time. Feng Feishue told Xiao Chen about the experts she saw in the various countries and the strange martial techniques. This broadened Xiao Chen's horizons, causing him to look forward to it. In the end, just as they were about to leave, Xiao Chen could not help but ask a question in his heart. He said, Feng Feishue, actually, I have always wanted to ask, why are you so good to me? The first time they met, she gave him a blue dragon medicine cauldron. The second time they met, she invited him to enter the heavenly Qin school. The third time they met, she gave him a heaven-ranked martial technique. After that, he created a great calamity. She helped him take care of the Shao clan, resolving his worries. After that, she asked you to invite him to join the Imperial Dragon Legion. She wanted to help him recover his true body and live a normal life. All of this was a great favor. Feng Feishue helped him without any conditions, causing him to feel an indescribable sense of doubt. In this world, there was no such thing as love without reason, nor was there any such thing as hatred without reason. Someone must have planted the seed of karma. Feng Feishue's pretty face was slightly stunned. However, she was not too shocked. She had already expected this question from Xiao Chen. Seeing the determination in Xiao Chen's pitch-black eyes, Feng Feishue's pretty face revealed some melancholy. Helping you is the same as helping myself. As for the exact reason, it is not convenient for me to tell you now. When you and I can truly decide our own fates, the answer will automatically come to light. It seemed like Feng Feishue still did not want to tell him the reason, the secret of the disappearance of the blue dragon martial spirit, and why Xiao Zhan chased her out of the clan. These were the secrets that had troubled Xiao Chen for a long time. It seemed like it would be difficult to get answers from Feng Feishue. What did she mean by truly deciding our own fates? Could it be that Xiao Chen and Feng Feishue's fates were not in his hands now? Seeing the silent Xiao Chen, Feng Feishue said softly, "If you really want to know, you can make a trip to the imperial capital. However, I hope that before you go, you will have absolute strength. Otherwise, your fate will be completely controlled by others. As the last inheritor of the blue dragon martial spirit, your existence implicates the interests of too many people. It would not be an exaggeration to say that every step you take is filled with danger. Back then, when your father chased you out of the Xiao clan, one of the main reasons was because of the benefits involved. He could not bear it, the entire Xiao clan could not bear it. All you can do is become stronger, there is no other way." Feng Feishue's words caused Xiao Chen to feel a headache. She was talking about the existence of the blue dragon martial spirit. Xiao Chen had a vague guess in his heart. Perhaps the energy that the blue dragon martial spirit carried was far greater than he imagined. However, he did not dare to think too deeply about it. He even purposely downplayed the connection between himself and the blue dragon martial spirit. This was because the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. He was just a transmigrator. There was no need for him to be involved in so many schemes. He only wanted to live for himself, to be more simple, to slowly walk the path of cultivation, to reach the peak step by step. However, Feng Feishue's words confirmed some of Xiao Chen's guesses. From the day he awakened the blue dragon martial spirit, whether he was active or passive, willing or unwilling, he was already implicated in certain matters. No matter how he tried to avoid it, he could not avoid it. Picking up the teacup, Xiao Chen drained it in one gulp. He placed the teacup heavily on the wooden table and calmed himself down. He said, "No matter what the truth is, I am living for myself and the people I care about. In the end, my fate is something that I have to fight for myself. I am indebted to you. If I want to repay you in the future, I will not hesitate to do so. I will take my leave first." After Xiao Chen spoke, he directly left this place. Feng Feishue looked at Xiao Chen's departing figure with an astonished expression on her face. After a long time, a secret door outside the hall opened. A beautiful woman wearing red robes appeared in the hall. The beautiful woman had an elegant aura. She was about 30 years old, but her exquisite face made her look like she was only 18 or 19. Time did not seem to have left any traces on her face. If one looked carefully, they might discover that Xiao Chen bore some resemblance to this woman. When Feng Feishue saw the beautiful woman, she said softly, "Aunt, he is right in front of you. Are you not going to come out and meet him?" The beautiful woman revealed a trace of sorrow in her eyes. The corners of her eyes seemed to be moist. She said softly, "There is no need. I owe him too much. I am already satisfied just to hear his voice." Feng Feishue went to the window of the tall building and looked out. She saw Xiao Chen turning into a purple beam of light and flying away quickly. She said indifferently, "I believe that he is the person I am waiting for. I will do my best to fight against the decision of my father and the elders' assembly. The promise that has lasted for 1,000 years must be passed down." There was still a sentence in her heart that she did not say out loud. It was as Xiao Chen said, in the end, fate is something that you have to fight for yourself. The woman that Feng Feishue referred to as her aunt looked at Feng Feishue and seemed to think of herself in the past. She sighed in her heart. After leaving the victorious chief pawn shop, Xiao Chen rested in an inn for 2 days. Then, he started to complete the remaining Black Sect missions. During the missions, he heard Feng Feishue spread the news that the Dragon Phoenix Cauldron was already in the hands of the Feng clan and that people were welcome to come and take a look. When Xiaochen first heard this news, he was slightly stunned. However, he quickly figured it out. Feng Feishue was trying to divert everyone's attention from Xiaochen. The Dragon Phoenix Cauldron was like the eye of a storm. It attracted the attention of many powers. No matter where Xiaochen went, his Dragon Phoenix Cauldron would attract attention. Of course, it would be attention with malicious intent. Unless he delivered the Dragon Phoenix Cauldron to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he would be protected by a strong power. By doing this, Feng Feishue had done Xiaochen a great favor. 1 month later, Xiaochen completed all the high-ranked missions he had received. He started his journey back to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Without the restrictions of missions, he rushed back at full speed. He returned to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in half a month. Then, Xiaochen headed straight for the Hall of Contributions on the Heaven Viewing platform. On the second floor of the Hall of Contributions, the person in charge of accepting missions verified the mission contracts that Xiaochen handed over one by one. You completed all the Black Sect missions in 3 months. I did not expect you to actually do it, the person in charge of the Hall of Contributions said in astonishment after he checked the contracts. Xiaochen smiled faintly and did not say anything. These high-ranked missions were all made after careful consideration. Without absolute confidence, Xiaochen would not accept so many high-ranked missions in one go. Chapter 333. There is a total of 30,000 contribution points. Take a look, that person said enviously. 30,000 contribution points were obtained by one person at the same time. This was the first time he had seen such a thing in his many years as an administrator. Xiaochen received it calmly and gave his thanks. The administrator behind him said, Yi Chen, the first elder said that after you return, you should find some time to look for him. Xiaochen stopped and turned around. He asked, is it urgent? That administrator said, not really. He specifically instructed you to go if you have time. If you don't, then forget it. As that administrator spoke, he looked at Xiaochen enviously. It had to be known that the first elder was now the person in charge of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He had never seen the first elder so polite to anyone before. It could only be said that Xiaochen's potential was too high. Xiaochen nodded gently and left. He could roughly guess why the first elder was looking for him. However, since it was not urgent, he would put it aside for now. After the mission handover was completed, Xiaochen immediately rushed to Qingyun Peak. In the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion, that was the only place that gave him a sense of belonging. As Xiaochen slowly walked up the long steps of Qingyun Peak, he looked at the familiar scenery around him. He felt an inexplicable warmth in his heart. When Bai, who was in the spirit blood jade, felt its surroundings, it immediately came out. It jumped onto Xiaochen's shoulder and stretched its limbs. It looked extremely cute. Big brother Yi Chen, when did you return? Xiao Yang and Xiao Meng, who were preparing to go down the mountain, suddenly saw Xiaochen's figure. The two of them ran over joyfully. Bai was very familiar with Xiao Yang and Xiao Meng. When it saw the two of them, it immediately stood up on Xiaochen's shoulder and greeted them with a gi sound. This made the two of them laugh. Xiaochen smiled helplessly and carried Bai down. He nodded and smiled, I just returned not long ago. How are elder sister Ryue's injuries? Xiaomeng was playing with Bai. When she heard Xiaochen's question, she looked up and said with a smile, you will know when you see it yourself. There will be a surprise. Xiao Yang and I are going down the mountain. Based on Xiaomeng's tone, it seemed like the injuries to Lu Ryue's meridians were completely healed. However, Xiaochen found it strange what the so-called surprise was. Xiao Yang, who was at the side, smiled and said, Big brother Yi Chen, go quickly. When elder sister Ryue sees you, she will definitely be happy. Elder sister Ryue has been in the dueling grounds for the past few days. Xiaochen nodded lightly. After bidding farewell to the two of them, he quickened his pace and flew towards the training ground. Before Xiaochen got close to the training ground, he felt a strong aura. Furthermore, Xiao Chen was very familiar with this aura. Xiao Chen stopped outside the training ground and muttered, "This is the aura of a martial king. Furthermore, it is very pure. Did elder sister Ryue break through?" It seemed like it. Lu Ryue was only a step away from becoming a martial king for a long time. Now that she obtained the tendon refining flower and was reborn, she should have broken through. Furthermore, this experience would probably allow her to advance to peak inferior grade martial king. Even some of the veteran martial kings would not be a match for her. For a long time, one of the main reasons why no one came to Qingyun Peak was because there were no martial kings holding down the fort. Now, it looked like this was a thing of the past. Xiao Chen felt joy from the bottom of his heart. He could not wait to enter the dueling grounds. Boom! 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 In the training field, a series of powerful auras exploded continuously. Lu Suifeng and Lu Ryue were exchanging moves in the dueling grounds. However, Lu Suifeng looked rather miserable. Rather than exchanging moves, he was more like a sandbag. "Elder sister, you don't have to be so ruthless. I am your younger brother," Lu Suifeng begged as he dodged Lu Ryue's attacks. Bang! Lu Ryue said calmly, "An unpolished jade is worthless. If you cannot even endure this little bit of hardship, how can I hand Qingyun Peak over to you in the future?" Lu Ryue swung her scabbard and knocked away Lu Suifeng's saber. The scabbard struck Lu Suifeng's wrist heavily, causing him to cry out in pain. Lu Suifeng glanced around and suddenly saw Xiao Chen outside the training ground. His eyes lit up and he quickly called out joyfully, "Elder sister, Yi Chen is here. Can you stop now?" Lu Ryue directly struck Lu Suifeng's chest. She smiled faintly, using this move to trick me into slacking off again. It is no longer effective. Lu Suifeng was in so much pain that he could not breathe properly. He coughed a few times and said, "Elder sister, it's true. Look outside." Although Lu Ryue did not believe it, she could not help but turn her head to look. She immediately saw a calm Xiao Chen outside the training ground. She immediately stopped what she was doing. Lu Suifeng took advantage of this opportunity to quickly leave the battlefield and rush towards Xiao Chen. "Yi Chen, you finally came back. If you still did not come back, I would have been beaten to death by my elder sister," Lu Suifeng said bitterly as he patted Xiao Chen's shoulder. Xiao Chen was knocked back 3 days by Lu Suifeng's palm strike. He had thoroughly experienced Lu Suifeng's enthusiasm. He stood firmly and smiled gently, "You should be rejoicing. Look at this palm strike, your strength has clearly increased significantly." Lu Suifeng smiled embarrassedly. Then he said mysteriously, "It's just a so-so. Compared to you, I am much weaker. I will be leaving first. You will have a pleasant surprise later." Xiao Chen found this strange. Why is everyone talking about a pleasant surprise? What exactly is the pleasant surprise? Lu Ryue gently leaped down from the dueling grounds arena. Her tight red robes accentuated her graceful figure as she walked over to Xiao Chen. Lu Ryue's flirtatious face had a trace of shyness. Her expression seemed to be somewhat nervous. However, she seemed to have made up her mind and quickly walked over to Xiao Chen. "Bo." Before Xiao Chen could react, Lu Ryue's tender red lips quickly pecked his lips. It was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, and she quickly retreated. Outside the dueling grounds, Lu Suifeng, Xiao Yang, and Xiao Meng, who had already agreed to leave, all appeared together. They stared at this scene without blinking. "Haha, my elder sister is really bold. However, she did what she said. I like it." Lu Suifeng laughed loudly at the side. Xiao Meng giggled and said, "However, it seems like she did not have much experience." That was it. Xiao Yang smiled and said, "Haha, she did not have any experience in the first place. The only time was when big brother Yi Chen took the initiative. We can leave now. If we don't, elder sister Ryue will go berserk." Behind the three of them, Bai looked at the two of them strangely. His large eyes were filled with doubt. The moment Xiao Yang spoke, Lu Suifeng and Xiao Meng immediately reacted. Xiao Meng held on to Bai and quickly retreated. Is this the so-called pleasant surprise? Xiao Chen muttered to himself. His delicate face blushed slightly, he did not know what to do. Although this was not the first time he kissed Lu Riyue, the last time they kissed was passively. However, previously, the two of them were passive. This time, it was different. This time, Lu Riyue was the one taking the initiative. Xiao Chen's heart, which had always been as calm as an ancient well, had a slight ripple. He asked with some difficulty, "Elder sister Riyue, what are you doing?" Lu Riyue originally had a bashful expression. However, when she saw Xiao Chen in such a predicament, she felt happy instead. She laughed loudly and said, "This is a reward for you. Thank you for the tendon refining flour. If not for the tendon refining flour, I would be a cripple. I would not have broken through to Martial King. Just thanks." Xiao Chen felt slightly disappointed in his heart. He said softly, "That is what I should do. It was a coincidence that I obtained the tendon refining flour." This fellow really does not know how to speak, Lu Riyue thought gloomily to herself. Never mind, his wooden character cannot be changed. Lu Riyue held on to Xiao Chen's hand and said softly, "Let's not talk about this anymore. I'll bring you to see something." Xiao Chen followed, feeling suspicious. When they arrived at a corner of the dueling grounds, Lu Riyue let go of Xiao Chen's hand and said, "This is it. Take a look." Ancient sabers were stabbed into the ground. The sabers contained a vigorous and ancient aura. Over 1,000 ancient sabers were arranged in a mysterious and complicated formation. The ancient aura on the sabers merged together. Xiao Chen stood in front and closed his eyes to feel it. It was like a magnificent army with thousands of men and horses charging at him with a surging killing chi. Kill. 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 The red throne in his sea of consciousness trembled continuously. Xiao Chen opened his eyes and said in astonishment, "This is a miniature ancient absolute saber formation. However, why does it feel different from before? The ancient aura is even denser. The killing chi contained in it is on a completely different level from before." Lu Riyue revealed a satisfied smile, "You guessed right. Every saber here has a history of more than 10,000 years. They are true ancient weapons. This ancient absolute saber formation will definitely help you comprehend listening to the sword and communicating with it." Xiao Chen was very moved. For Lu Riyue to be able to find such ancient weapons, she must have put in a lot of effort. Xiao Chen knew from Lu Suifeng that Lu Riyue owed Lu Chen a favor for the ancient weapons she borrowed in the past. This time, in order to obtain so many ancient weapons, she must have spent a lot more than before. Actually, Lu Riyue knew that once she comprehended listening to the sword and communicating with it, it would be time for her to leave Qingyun Peak. However, Lu Riyue still helped him without hesitation. This kindness was something Xiao Chen found hard to accept. Xiao Chen said sincerely, "Riyue, thank you. I promise you that no matter what, I will help Qingyun Peak obtain the first rank in the Inner Disciple ranking competition." The Inner Disciple ranking competition was the last thing that Xiao Chen wanted to do for Qingyun Peak while he was in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He could only do this to help Lu Riyue recover Qingyun Peak. A look of astonishment flashed on Lu Riyue's face. She did not hear what Xiao Chen said at the end. There was a look of pleasant surprise on her flirtatious face as she said, "What did you call me?" Xiao Chen suddenly understood, "Sorry, I said the wrong thing, elder sister Riyue." Lu Riyue giggled and said, "Hey, am I that scary? Why are you apologizing? You did not say anything wrong. I will allow you to call me Riyue in the future. Remember, you are not allowed to change the way you address me." Xiao Chen felt somewhat embarrassed as he said, "Got it. Elder sister Riyue, no, it's Riyue." Xiao Chen accidentally said it again. When he saw Lu Riyue's expression change, he quickly rushed over. Only then did Lu Riyue smile in satisfaction. Chapter 334. You have just returned from a long journey. Go and rest in the ancient absolute saber formation and give it a try, Lu Riyue suggested. Xiao Chen thought about it and agreed. This strengthened version of the ancient absolute saber formation would definitely have an additional risk compared to the previous one. He was not fully prepared for it yet. It would be good to rest for a day before giving it a try. Xiao Chen took his leave and headed to his courtyard. The courtyard was very clean and tidy. The fallen leaves were swept to the side. The stone table was also spotless. It was clear that during the time Xiao Chen was away, someone came to clean the courtyard frequently. Xiao Chen sat at the stone table absent-mindedly. When he walked out of the dueling grounds, he felt that his mind had not calmed down. Earlier, he had only forcefully suppressed his emotions in front of Lu Ruyue. Now, he could no longer hold it in and let it all erupt. He had never been in such a state before. If it was in the past, he would definitely use the time before the sky turned dark and not waste it at all on cultivation. He would definitely not be like this now, sitting in the courtyard and letting his thoughts run wild. Actually, ever since the last time Lu Ruyue was injured and her mind was in a mess, Xiao Chen already had a vague feeling that Lu Ruyue had unknowingly taken up a very important position in his heart. When did this feeling start? Xiao Chen himself was not clear. Perhaps it started when Lu Ruyue blocked Song Kei's attack for him. Actually, he had already unknowingly fallen into that kiss. After that, he unknowingly fell even deeper. However, he was engrossed in cultivation and neglected it. Or perhaps it could be said that he purposely ignored the truest feelings in his heart. Only when Lu Ruyue was injured did it erupt with such intensity. Her pain was like hitting him, causing him to be unable to calm down. Night slowly descended. There was no moon tonight, only a sky full of stars, flickering with starlight. Xiao Chen sat alone in the courtyard for a long time. Lu Ruyue's kiss during the day disturbed Xiao Chen's mind once again. It was even more intense than when Lu Ruyue was injured. This was an uncontrollable longing. At this moment, Xiao Chen's mind was filled with Lu Ruyue's figure. That calm kiss seemed to linger on his lips. Xiao Chen did his best to calm his thoughts. He looked at the starlight filling the sky and took a deep breath. He leaped into the air and flew over the wall, heading for Lu Ruyue's independent courtyard. Xiao Chen moved like a flood dragon. His speed was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, he stopped on a big tree outside Lu Ruyue's courtyard. A series of soft shouts came from the courtyard. Xiao Chen's eyes were like lightning. With the help of the weak starlight, he could clearly see the situation in the courtyard. It was already late at night, but Lu Ruyue did not feel sleepy. She was focused on practicing a set of saber techniques. A strong wind blew in the courtyard, kicking up countless fallen leaves. Sharp saber chi spread out in all directions. However, with Xiao Chen's eyes, he could tell that Lu Ruyue's mental state was somewhat unstable. As a result, her saber techniques were full of openings. If she fought an enemy like this, there would be serious consequences. Xiao Chen watched quietly as Lu Ruyue practiced her saber techniques in the courtyard. He revealed a faint smile on his face and slowly calmed down. After an hour, Xiao Chen quietly descended from the tree and headed for his courtyard. Xiao Chen already had an answer to the hazy feelings in his heart. However, he did not have any confidence in how to proceed. Perhaps it was better this way. Wang! Wang! Just at this moment, the spirit blood jade in front of his chest suddenly trembled. Xiao Chen's expression changed slightly. He said in surprise, "What happened to Bai? Why is the spirit blood cloud pulsating so intensely?" The warning from the spirit blood jade startled Xiao Chen. The spirit blood jade was the link between Xiao Chen and Bai. It would only give a warning when one of them was in grave danger. Xiao Chen activated the windwalk shoes and raised his speed to the limit. Then, he rushed in the direction that he sensed. After a while, Xiao Chen had already left the range of Qingyun Peak. However, the place that he sensed was still some distance away. Xiao Chen stopped in a lush forest. Xiao Chen was no stranger to this forest. Normally, when Xiao Chen practiced or tested out new martial techniques, he would choose this place. Because this place was very desolate and Qingyun Peak had very few people, no matter how big of a commotion he made, no one would discover him. Since Bai came here, she was definitely not ambushed. Xiao Chen slowly calmed down. However, the spirit blood jade pulsated even more intensely. What happened this time? Xiao Chen frowned. He could not figure it out. Could it be that I killed myself? Boom. Boom. A huge energy fluctuation spread out. Xiao Chen's speed increased again. Occasionally, there would be flashes of light in the dark forest. The light caused the forest to flicker between bright and dark. A horrifying energy fluctuation spread out in the air. A strong wind blew, causing the trees to sway left and right. Countless leaves flew around and dust filled the air. Xiao Chen gathered his essence in front of him and the falling leaves and dust exploded into powder. There seemed to be a storm in the middle of the forest. It kicked up a strong wind and gave off a shocking energy fluctuation. What exactly is going on? This energy fluctuation has already reached the boundary of a rank 7 spirit beast. Furthermore, it is still increasing. Xiao Chen thought to himself. No matter what, he had to hurry over to understand something. So. Xiao Chen pierced through the forest like an arrow. He could not be bothered to avoid some of the trees blocking his way. He simply punched them to pieces. Xiao Chen used brute force to carve a path through the dense forest. The spirit blood jade in front of Xiao Chen's chest started to give off a bright scarlet light. He felt a warm sensation on his chest. It was frighteningly hot. Hu Qi. Hu Qi. After a while, Xiao Chen finally arrived at the center of the storm. Bai's entire body was snow-white. At this moment, her entire body was flickering with a jade-like luster. There was a weak figure reflected in her body. That figure was struggling non-stop, as though it was enduring some kind of immense pain. Under the illumination of the starlight, she gave off a different kind of brilliance. She was very beautiful. Energy ripples danced in the air around her, looking like crystalline ribbons. As the ribbons danced, a gust of wind surged out, forming a ferocious whirlwind that spread through the forest. When Xiao Chen saw all this, he was completely stunned. He said in disbelief, "This is shape-shifting." Could it be that when she sneaked out at night in the past, she was trying to shape-shift? This is too dangerous. Bai's cultivation realm was not high enough. Normally, shape-shifting spirit beasts would only attempt it after they reached rank 8. A rank 8 spirit beast was equivalent to a human martial monarch. Furthermore, the success rate was only about 50%. Normally, only those that had gained intelligence would choose to shapeshift. To spirit beasts, shapeshifting was a great opportunity. However, this opportunity was accompanied by boundless danger. What an idiot. She is too reckless. If I had known this would happen, I would not have passed the mysterious 9 heavenly revolution transformation to her. Xiao Chen said somewhat vexedly. If not for the mysterious 9 heavenly revolution transformation, Bai would not have risked her life to try. Unfortunately, it was already at a crucial moment. It was too late to stop it. That would only cause the shape-shifting to fail and turn Bai to dust. Boom. 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 As Xiao Chen was thinking, resplendent pillars of light came from Bai's body. The horrifying energy ripples swept over, turning the surrounding trees into dust. Bang! Xiao Chen sent out a palm strike and shattered the energy ripples flying at him. However, just as he shattered one, a few more flickering pillars of light surged over with a surging torrent. The attack of a peak rank 7 demonic beast was simply too strong. Xiao Chen had no choice but to retreat a few hundred meters. Then, he soared into the air and landed on the top of a tree. Unexpectedly, the shape-shifting of a spirit beast would attract such intense energy fluctuations. Furthermore, Bai was only a rank 6 spirit beast. If it was a true rank 8 spirit beast that shape-shifted, how horrifying would the energy be? Xiao Chen stared at Bai, who was in the pillar of light. His heart filled with worry. With such strong energy, if he was not careful, he would be crushed to death. The resplendent pillar of light soared into the sky and shone for a long time. The surrounding spiritual energy flew towards Bai like rain. In the end, the spiritual energy became too dense. Countless specks of starlight floated in the air. These specks of starlight were all made of spiritual energy. The densely packed specks of starlight sparkled in the dark night like gorgeous stars. The tiny human figure in Bai's jade-like skin slowly became clearer as spiritual energy poured in. Now, it only lacked the final step, accepting the baptism of heaven and earth before it could truly shape-shift. The so-called baptism of heaven and earth was, to put it bluntly, a punishment from the heavenly Daos. This step was also the most dangerous one. Spirit beasts and humans were completely unrelated species created by the heavenly Daos. Regardless of whether a human wanted to become a spirit beast or a spirit beast wanted to become a human, it was a huge challenge to the heavenly Daos. If he could survive the fight against the heavenly Dao, not only would he be able to transform successfully, moreover, he could even steal a trace of the heavenly Dao and obtain karmic luck, allowing him to have unlimited potential in the future. Xiaochen looked up and saw the boundless clouds churning in the sky. Thunder rumbled. The baptism of the heavenly Daos was already brewing. The beautiful human figure in Bai's body seemed to sense the might of the heavenly Daos. She sat down cross-legged and silently circulated the mysterious 9 heavenly revolution transformation technique. A thin golden halo appeared around Bai's body, giving her jade-like body a dignified and sacred feeling. Xiaochen frowned heavily as he looked at the increasingly horrifying electric might and pressure accumulating. His heart slowly leaped to his throat, he felt incredibly nervous. Boom! The continuously accumulating lightning might finally reached a critical point. Then, it exploded. A silver snake tore through the sky, heading straight for Bai. When the berserk lightning struck the golden halo, it gave off a loud sound. Countless specks of dust flew up from the surrounding ground and filled the air in an instant, completely obscuring Xiaochen's vision. The ground started to tremble. The tree that Xiaochen was on shook violently. Chapter 335. Xiaochen stood at the top of the tree. His body moved along with it, as though he would be flung off in the next moment. However, he maintained a delicate balance and remained standing at the top of the tree, not getting flung off. Boom! 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 Bolts of surging lightning struck down endlessly, shaking the heavens and shaking the earth. It was like the lightning was going to shatter space. This light illuminated the pitch-black night in the forest. Nothing must happen to him. Xiaochen prayed. The lightning seemed to strike Xiaochen's heart, making him extremely anxious. Under the baptism of the heavenly Dao, Xiaochen did not dare to release his spiritual sense. Otherwise, if the heavenly Dao detected it, he might receive an even harsher punishment. Dust filled the sky, blocking Xiaochen's vision. Occasionally, lightning fell from the sky, as though it would never end. Hu Qi. Xiaochen sent out a sharp palm wind. The palm wind was as sharp as a saber. It cut through the dust filling the sky, revealing a crack that extended towards Bai, who was in the center of the dust cloud. The crack only existed for an instant before it mended. Xiaochen's eyes were like lightning. In this fleeting moment, he finally saw Bai's figure. Under the baptism of the lightning, that golden halo became even brighter. The divine and dignified aura deterred others from looking directly at it. Fortunately, I can hold on for a while longer, and I will pass. After all, the mysterious 9 heavenly revolution transformation is an immortal-grade cultivation technique of the fiend race. Xiaochen heaved a sigh of relief. The lightning roared for a while before it completely quieted down. However, the boundless clouds in the sky had not dissipated yet. It was like the calm before the storm. The air in the forest stopped flowing in an instant. The dust filling the sky seemed to freeze, not moving at all. A heavy atmosphere spread out in the forest, making breathing difficult. It felt like a huge rock was blocking one's chest. It was extremely uncomfortable. Xiaochen held his breath as he looked at the rumbling thunderclouds in the sky. He muttered to himself, "This should be the last one. I hope nothing goes wrong." Right after Xiao Chen said that, a golden light exploded in the horizon. The boundless dark clouds looked boundlessly resplendent under the illumination of the golden light. A golden bolt of lightning tore through the night sky. It was like a golden javelin piercing through the obstruction of space. It descended from the sky and landed on Bai's head. The boundless golden light exploded, and Xiao Chen felt a piercing pain in his eyes. After a while, he was temporarily blinded. Everything in front of him was pitch black, and he completely lost all light. The unending shockwave struck Xiao Chen's body, causing him to sway unsteadily in the air before he fell heavily to the ground. Xiao Chen extended his spiritual sense and his surroundings appeared in his mind. Then, he flipped in the air and landed firmly on the ground. I was too careless. The golden lightning is probably one of the highest grades of lightning. Even a martial monarch would not dare to look at it directly, Xiao Chen thought to himself. He had to get rid of the lightning in his eyes as soon as possible. Otherwise, it might leave behind a hidden injury that might cause permanent damage to his eyes. Xiao Chen sat cross-legged. Purple essence flowed through his meridians and into his eyes, carefully expelling the remnant golden lightning in them. After a while, the lightning was completely gone. Xiao Chen opened his eyes again, and his vision was restored. Slash! With a shout, Xiao Chen rose from the ground and quickly flew towards the spot where the golden light had landed. The dust that filled the sky slowly dissipated. In the center of the dust, a perfect and flawless girl's body appeared in Xiao Chen's vision without a single piece of clothing. The girl was only 14 or 15 years old. Her skin was as soft as snow, and her delicate facial features matched with her small oval face. She looked very delicate and cute. Her eyes were tightly shut, and her thick eyelashes cast two fan-shaped shadows on her cheeks. As she breathed, her eyelashes seemed to tremble like butterfly feathers. The girl looked like she was asleep. When Xiao Chen felt the girl's aura of life, he heaved a sigh of relief. He took out a set of clothes from the universe ring and placed it on Bai's body. Xiao Chen carried her in his embrace. Her soft and delicate body had the youthful and cute aura of a young girl. It would make one's heart tremble. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and calmed the intense fire in his heart. This was a physiological reaction that all men would have. Xiao Chen rushed back to his courtyard. After causing such a big commotion, it would be hard to avoid startling some people. He had to leave this place quickly. Xiao Chen carried by and executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art. He flew across the ground, and the scenery on both sides flashed past his vision. At some point in time, Bai, who was in Xiao Chen's embrace, suddenly opened her eyes. When she opened her eyes, there was a seductive air to her lovely face. The corners of her eyes curled up slightly, and her eyebrows reached her temples. This was a pair of captivating phoenix eyes. Her eyebrows were curved as she looked at Xiao Chen's serious face. Her eyes were filled with curiosity, and her lips curled up into a faint smile. She looked down and focused on Xiao Chen's thin lips. It seemed like she thought of something. Suddenly, Bai hooked her soft arms around Xiao Chen's neck. Her red lips parted slightly, and her snow-white teeth bit down on Xiao Chen's lips. The sudden change in the situation and the slight pain at the corner of his lips caused Xiao Chen's essence to be disrupted. He nearly fell to the ground. At the critical moment, he quickly dispersed his essence before he could stabilize himself. Bai released her teeth and revealed a smile. Her face was filled with pride. A small trickle of blood appeared on Xiao Chen's lips. It was the result of Bai biting his lower lip. In one day, he was forcefully kissed by two girls. Xiao Chen did not know whether to laugh or cry. The expression on Xiao Chen's face affected the wound at the corner of his lips. It immediately caused Xiao Chen to suck in a breath of air in pain. This is not a normal kind of pain. Where did this girl learn this from? When Bai saw the pained expression on Xiao Chen's face, she said suspiciously, "Elder brother Xiao Chen, what's wrong? You look like you are in pain." However, when elder sister Ryue kissed you, your expression was very comfortable. Could it be that Bai did something wrong? Perhaps it was because this was the first time she spoke, or perhaps it was because she saw the pained expression on Xiao Chen's face, but Bai's immature voice sounded very timid and fearful. Xiao Chen suddenly understood. So that's how it is. However, you did not learn from her properly. She only lightly tapped me, not bit me. However, Xiao Chen naturally said these words in his heart. It was not good for Xiao Chen to explain this to her directly. Furthermore, when facing the transformed Bai, it was impossible for Xiao Chen to get used to it. You are not wrong. However, you cannot casually do this to others. You can only do it to someone with a very close relationship, Xiao Chen said after thinking for a long time. Bai nodded. Her cute face revealed an understanding expression. She said in a melodious and immature voice, I know. Elder sister Ryue likes elder brother Xiao Chen, that's why she can do that. I also like elder brother Xiao Chen, that's why I can do that. Elder brother Xiao Yang also likes elder sister Xiao Meng. I often see him secretly kissing elder sister Xiao Meng. Xiao Chen felt a headache coming on. The more he explained, the more confused he became. However, he finally understood why Bai did it. She had just transformed into a human and she already knew so many strange things. So it turned out that she learned it from Xiao Meng. Xiao Chen was not good at this kind of topic. He could only smile embarrassedly and did not say anything more. He freed one hand and took out a pair of shoes from the universe ring. Since you are awake, you can walk by yourself. I'll give you a pair of shoes. In the future, you have to learn how to wear shoes. Bai hooked her arms around Xiao Chen's neck and squeezed herself in Xiao Chen's embrace. Her watery eyes were filled with doubt as she asked seriously, why? Elder brother Xiao Chen, didn't you often hug me in the past? In the future, you have to hug me as well. Bai likes it when you hug me. Can you stop moving around? Xiao Chen said depressedly in his heart. Bai was now wearing a simple robe. Most of her body was not covered properly. Most of her snow-white skin was exposed. She came into direct contact with Xiao Chen. The young girl's fiery body pressed tightly against Xiao Chen's chest. Her firm and soft breasts occasionally pressed against Xiao Chen's chest. To any man with a normal physiology, this would arouse the flames of desire in his heart. This was especially so for the girl before Xiao Chen. She did not know what kind of arousal her current actions would arouse in a man. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and worked hard for a long time before the blazing flame in his heart calmed down. After a while, he opened his eyes and said calmly, "All right, but you have to promise me not to move. Do you understand?" Bai nodded her head obediently. Bai will not move. Bai is very obedient. I will definitely not move. Xiao Chen put away the shoes that he took out and looked at Bai's pure face. That pair of soul-stirring eyes made him smile helplessly. Xiao Chen thought to himself, even if I don't move, she is still a fatal temptation. Unfortunately, this girl does not understand anything now. In the future, I cannot let her be with Xiao Meng. I have to teach her more. After sorting out his emotions, Xiao Chen executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art again and flew towards his courtyard. Not long after Xiao Chen and Bai Xiao left, two scarlet lights landed on the ground where Bai had transformed. These two people were wearing scarlet battle armor and scarlet cloaks. They had scarlet bloodsucker sabers at their waists and scarlet medallions on their belts. They were the Divine Saber Camp's commander and deputy commander. The two of them had grave and stern expressions. There was no focus in their eyes, it was chaotic. It seemed like there were countless aggrieved spirits in their eyes, letting out sorrowful cries. The two of them just stood there quietly and casually released their auras. The surrounding vegetation seemed to feel a horrifying killing intent. The grass bent over and prostrated itself on the ground, trembling. It was as though it was alive, feeling incomparable fear. The person on the right looked around, as though he had seen through everything. After a while, he said, "Big brother, it looks like that golden lightning did indeed come from here." The voice was somewhat hoarse, but it was very steady. The person who spoke was the Divine Saber Camp's deputy commander, Shui Yan. The person who was addressed as Big Brother was the Divine Saber Camp's current commander, Shimaning. Shimaning closed his eyes and a red light that was invisible to the naked eye was emitted from his body. When the red light returned to his body, he said, "The golden lightning is indeed the might of the heavenly Daos." For this person to be able to withstand such an intense might of the heavenly Daos, he is no weaker than Murong Chong. Chapter 336. Zhuo Yan said softly, "What does Big Brother mean?" Shimaning nodded and said, "Investigate this person's identity." "I want this person." Xiao Qin carried by, enduring the physical friction and mental torture along the way. When they finally arrived at his courtyard, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, there was another problem. Although there were many rooms in this courtyard, Xiao Qin had always been the only one staying there. Thus, there was only one room that could be used. The others were all empty, there were no suitable beds. If it were in the past, there would naturally be no problem. Xiao Qin could sleep on the bed, and Bai could enter the spirit blood jade. Or, it would be fine if she slept beside Xiao Qin. However, things were different now. Now that Bai had taken human form, it would be inhumane to lock her in the spirit blood jade. However, if he placed a pretty girl who did not know anything, who would occasionally tease Xiao Qin, by his bed, Xiao Qin would not be able to sleep. He would not even be able to calm down when he cultivated. It looked like he could only spend the night outside the courtyard. Xiao Qin carried Bai into the room and placed her on the bed. He said, "You sleep first, I'm going to cultivate." Bai burrowed into the blanket and stretched her body. She looked at Xiao Qin with her large, watery eyes. She said in a melodious voice, "Elder brother Xiao Qin, come quickly. Let's sleep together." As Xiao Qin looked at the innocent and serious Xiao Bai, who seemed to take it for granted, he revealed an extremely conflicted expression. After a long time, he squeezed out a sentence, "Bai, you have already taken human form. There are some things that you cannot do as casually as before. If a man and a woman are not lovers, they cannot sleep together. Do you understand?" Bai revealed a pondering expression on her delicate and cute face. Her little head was doing its best to digest Xiao Qin's words. She seemed to understand and not understand at the same time. When Xiao Qin saw her expression, he felt that she was really like a little girl, ignorant and lovable. Tenderness rose in his heart. He knew that some things could not be rushed. He had to teach her slowly. "Listen to me and sleep early. I'm going to the courtyard to cultivate. Don't think too much about it. Just take it slow," Xiao Qin said softly. Bai nodded lightly and said, "I'll listen to you and go to bed first. However, if brother Xiao Qin is tired at night, you can also come and sleep." Xiao Qin smiled gently and didn't say anything more. He immediately closed the door gently. He turned around and raised his head to look at the sky full of stars. He thought back to when he had first obtained Bai and how the mature six-tailed spirit fox had protected Bai without any regard for its life. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. For the first time, he felt a tinge of regret for what he had done. "No matter what, since I have snatched away the love of your life, I will do my best to ensure that she does not suffer any harm." Xiao Qin looked at the starry sky with a calm expression as he made his promise. It was already late at night. Xiao Qin sat cross-legged on a rock in the courtyard. As the cool and tranquil night breeze blew, Xiao Qin's restless heart slowly calmed down. The purple thunder divine incantation circulated slowly. Spiritual energy flowed over like water. The spiritual energy at the foot of the mountain could not be compared to the spiritual energy at the top of the mountain. If he left the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in the future and wanted to find such a good place to cultivate again, it would be very difficult. Xiao Qin wanted to cultivate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation to the 6th layer before he left. As he cultivated, time flew by quickly. The stars in the sky slowly dispersed and a faint light gradually appeared on the horizon. Dawn was coming soon. When the first ray of sunlight shone on Xiao Qin's face, Xiao Qin opened his tightly shut eyes. A bright light flashed in them. Xiao Qin saw that Bai had woken up at some point in time. She had one hand on the stone table and was looking at him in a daze. With a flip of his palm, Xiaochen absorbed the surrounding purple electricity into his body. He got up and walked over to Bai. He smiled faintly and said, "When did you wake up? Why didn't you sleep a little longer?" Bai slowly stood up and said, "I woke up very early. From today onwards, I will be a man, so I cannot be lazy anymore." The instant Bai stood up, Xiaochen suddenly discovered that she was still wearing the robes that he had given her yesterday. Furthermore, it was just draped over her shoulders. When Xiaochen stood up, his chest revealed a large patch of snow-white skin. He blushed slightly. It was not very obvious at night. However, it was currently daytime. It was not very appropriate. Xiaochen recalled that there seemed to be a set of clothes in his universe ring. It was a set of clothes that he had bought for his maidservant Bao in the past. Bao's figure was about the same as Bai's. It should fit her well. Xiaochen searched the universe ring with his spiritual sense and finally found it. He quickly took it out. "Wear these clothes first. In the future, you have to dress up neatly when you go out." Xiaochen handed the clothes to Bai. Then, he looked at her smooth feet and said, "Also, remember to wear shoes." Bai received the clothes happily. However, after measuring them repeatedly, her delicate face revealed a distressed expression. She said, "However, I do not know how to wear them. Elder brother Xiaochen, please help Bai wear them." Bai asked with anticipation in her eyes. Xiaochen took a deep breath. There were some things that he had to harden his heart. Bai was already a normal girl. She had to learn these things. You have to learn this. You cannot rely on anyone's help. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to go out, Xiaochen said sullenly. Bai looked at Xiaochen's serious expression and nodded seriously. She said, "Bai is very smart. Elder brother Xiaochen, don't worry. I will definitely learn it." Xiaochen nodded and smiled. "In that case, go quickly. Put on your clothes, I will bring you out." As Xiaochen watched Xiao Bai pick up the clothes and head for his room, he revealed a grave expression. How should he explain Xiao Bai's identity to the others? This would be problematic. However, he could still trust the people of Qingyun Peak. He would just tell them directly. He could not lock Bai up in the courtyard forever. Sooner or later, she would have to go out and see others. Xiaochen took out some breakfast from the universe ring. He sat at the stone table and ate unhurriedly. After a while, the door opened with a creak. Xiaochen put down the teacup in his hand and looked back. His eyes lit up. He saw Bai wearing a long green dress. Coupled with her pure and cute face, she looked like a little sister. That pair of almond-shaped eyes added a hint of charm to this pure temperament. The two different temperaments merged naturally, making Bai look very tempting. Bai walked around Xiaochen and giggled, "Do I look good?" Xiaochen was slightly distracted. However, he quickly recovered. He nodded and said, "You look good. Let's eat something first." Bai walked over in satisfaction. She came to the table and ate the breakfast in small bites. Her eyes darted around before she said, "Elder brother Xiaochen, I want to drink wine." Xiaochen smiled helplessly. He took out a bottle gourd and poured her a small cup. He said, "You are only allowed 1 cup. It is not a good thing for a girl to like to drink wine." Bai happily held the wine cup in her hand and sniffed it. After that, she happily took a small sip. Clearly, she did not have enough. Then, she finished the wine in the cup in one big gulp. After she finished drinking, Bai immediately looked at Xiaochen pitifully. Before she transformed, she often used this trick on Xiaochen. Now, she unconsciously used it again. I cannot let her do as she pleases. Xiaochen put on a serious expression and said, "No, there is only 1 cup. Eat something." Seeing that Xiaochen did not agree, Bai felt helpless. She could only slowly eat her breakfast. The pitiful expression on her face made others want to agree. In the end, Xiaochen hardened his heart and did not agree. He had to set the rules slowly. Otherwise, it would be hard to teach her in the future. After they finished eating, Xiao Chen led Bai to the dueling grounds of Qingyun Peak. Xiao Chen was looking forward to the strengthened ancient absolute saber formation. All this while, he had not forgotten his purpose in coming to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. It was to learn listening to the sword and communicating with it, so that he could awaken Ao Jiao as soon as possible. As they walked on the mountain path of Qingyun Peak, Bai was very lively. She walked in front of Xiao Chen. She was as fast as the wind, unable to stop. She was very excited. When Xiao Chen saw this, he thought to himself, looking at the familiar world from a different perspective, anyone would be excited. This was especially so for Bai, who was still a child. However, when they approached the dueling grounds, Bai became very quiet. It was as though she was afraid of coming into contact with other people. Xiao Chen consoled her, "It's fine. The people of Qingyun Peak are all friends. Friends do not mind so much." Bai nodded her head as though she understood. However, she still hid behind Xiao Chen. She was no longer as lively as before. Xiao Chen shook his head slightly and took the lead to enter the dueling grounds. Soft shouts came from the dueling grounds. Today was somewhat surprising. Xiao Yang and Xiao Meng, who were rarely seen, were cultivating here as well. They were exchanging moves with each other. When Lu Suifeng, who was exchanging moves with Lu Ruyue, saw his savior, he immediately revealed a smile. He quickly ran over to Xiao Chen. Lu Suifeng immediately saw Bai behind Xiao Chen. He was startled and immediately became stunned. The smile on his face froze as he stared at Bai. Xiao Chen coughed twice before Lu Suifeng reacted. He smiled awkwardly and said, sorry. Yi Chen, who is this beauty? Why do I find her familiar? Aren't you going to introduce her? When Lu Ruyue, Xiao Yang, and the others discovered the situation, they all came over out of curiosity. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Xiao Chen organized his thoughts and decided to tell them the truth. There was no point in hiding such things. She is Bai. She just transformed last night. Lu Suifeng's expression changed slightly. He smiled embarrassedly and said, Yi Chen, you must be joking. Xiao Chen had a calm expression as he said, do I look like I'm joking? Seeing Lu Ruyue casting a doubtful gaze at him, Xiao Chen nodded and said, her situation is a little special. I will tell everyone the exact reason in the future. However, I hope everyone can help me keep this a secret for now. Lu Ruyue was the first to recover her wits. She said seriously, Yi Chen, you don't have to worry about this. Bai is the safest here. Xiao Chen gently pushed Bai to the front of the crowd and said, Bai, say hello to everyone. At this moment, Bai was no longer as afraid as before. She smiled and said, elder brother Suifeng, elder brother Xiao Yang, elder sister Ruyue, elder sister Xiao Meng, how are you? Chapter 337. Xiao Meng pulled Bai over and said, let's go. Bai, I'll bring you to do your hair. A girl with messy hair does not look good. Before Xiao Chen could stop her, Xiao Meng had already pulled Bai away. Lu Ruyue smiled and said, let her go. Nothing will happen to her in Qingyun Peak. Xiao Chen was not afraid of anything happening. He was only worried that Bai would learn something strange from Xiao Meng. Xiao Chen smiled helplessly and withdrew his gaze, thank you. I have already made my preparations to enter the ancient absolute saber formation. Lu Ruyue withdrew her smile and said seriously, come with me. This time, the ancient absolute saber formation is much more dangerous than the previous ones. It tests your mental state even more. There are some things that I need you to pay attention to in advance. Lu Ruyue led Xiao Chen to a corner of the ancient absolute saber formation in the dueling grounds. She carefully explained some of the things that he needed to pay attention to. Under Lu Ruyue's guidance, Xiao Chen slowly walked into the saber formation. The killing qi of the ancient weapons surged over, continuously attacking Xiao Chen's soul. If it was a weaker person with a weaker soul energy, the killing qi that transcended time would cause their soul to scatter on the spot. Xiao Chen guarded his dantian and used his spiritual sense to protect his body. He blocked the flood of killing chi and sat down cross-legged in the center of the formation. Wang! The small saber in Lu Rui's hand gave off a melodious hum as it was drawn from its scabbard. The blade of the saber trembled continuously. Lu Rui was slowly activating the listening to the sword and communicating with it that she grasped. The weapon stuck in the ground immediately trembled as well. The buzzing sound reverberated throughout the dueling grounds. The sound of the thousands of ancient weapons trembling gathered together and formed a deafening sound. An intense wind blew around the saber formation without any wind. Lu Rui's pretty face was filled with a grave expression as she shouted suddenly, "Heavenly saber formation." The small saber in Xiao Chen's hand gave off a dazzling light. A strong wind instantly gathered on Xiao Chen, who was in the center of the formation, forming a pillar of wind. Extreme. The light left his body and entered the wind pillar in the blink of an eye. The wind pillar immediately emitted a bright light. Then, with a swoosh, all the weapons began to glow. After doing all this, the blood drained from Lu Rui's face. She looked incredibly pale, and her body wobbled. When Lu Suifeng, who was beside her, saw the situation, he quickly flew over. He revealed a grave expression as he extended his hand to support Lu Rui. "Sister, is it worth it to help him like this? With your current cultivation, activating this strengthened ancient absolute saber formation will exhaust half a year of cultivation." Spending half a year's worth of cultivation was equivalent to wasting half a year's worth of time for peak cultivators. To a peak cultivator, if they did not work hard for a month, they might leave the group of peak geniuses. Wasting half a year's time would be a great loss. Lu Rui rubbed her temples with her right hand. After a while, she opened her eyes. She felt much better. She revealed a faint smile on her pretty face. She said softly, "Aside from listening to the sword and communicating with it, he has done so much for Qingyun Peak. If I do not help him, who can?" Lu Suifeng said softly, "However, if he learns listening to the sword and communicating with it, he will definitely leave the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, this Qingyun Peak." When Lu Rui heard this, an undetectable disappointment flashed in her black eyes. She said softly, "From the first day he came to Qingyun Peak, I knew that he was just a passerby to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion and Qingyun Peak." After pausing for a while, Lu Rui smiled helplessly. She revealed an indifferent expression and continued, "In this world, there are some people who are destined to be extremely talented. Their names will shake the world, shocking the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries. Rather than tying him down, it is better to lend him a helping hand and climb to the peak of this world." Within the ancient absolute saber formation, Xiao Chen suddenly discovered the scene before him change under the light of all the weapons. He entered a gray world. Countless sabers tore through the sky, flying at Xiao Chen quickly. Xiao Chen, who had entered the ancient absolute saber formation many times before, had a calm expression. He did not panic at all. With a thought, a snow-white saber immediately appeared in his hand. The saber was 2 fingers wide and 1.5 meters long. The saber's blade flickered with a cold light. Xiao Chen had trained in the miniature ancient absolute saber formation for a few months. He had already made some progress in listening to the sword and communicating with it. All he lacked now was an opportunity. An opportunity that would allow him to completely grasp listening to the sword and communicating with it. Dang! 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 As the saber danced around, saber lights shot out, knocking away the sabers flying at him. Standing in the air, Xiao Chen had a pensive expression on his face. He said indifferently, "In the past, when I was in the miniature ancient absolute saber formation, I could already shatter the weapons flying at me. However, this time, I used 70% of my strength and could only barely knock them away." It looked like it was as Lu Rui said. The might of this strengthened ancient absolute saber formation was at least 5 times stronger than before. The sharp saber lights came in an endless stream, flying at Xiao Chen as if they wanted to swallow him up. "Quick, quick, find your saber. Find your saber." A familiar voice rang out in Xiao Chen's ears again. His expression was calm as he ignored it. He flew up and down in the air. Saber lights flashed as he practiced the Wukue saber technique. Glittering Wukue. Wukue transforms to Qi. Qi breaks Wukue. Xiaoqin shouted 3 times and executed the Wukue saber technique infused with the state of thunder at full power. Streams of purple energy shattered all the sabers flying at him. The air slowly turned quiet. However, it was only quiet for a moment. Then, countless sabers flickered with dazzling saber lights. They flew at Xiaoqin even more ferociously and quickly. Instantly, a bright light burst out in the gray space. It was so bright that it dazzled everyone's eyes. Wukue blossoms. A purple flower bud appeared under Xiaoqian's feet. It gave off a strange purple light and enveloped Xiaoqian's body. Bang! 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 The sabers clashed on the surface of the flower bud. The continuous attacks were like a torrential storm, ringing out endlessly. Xiao! The flower buds suddenly blossomed and purple petals filled the air. When the sabers struck the petals, they gave off intense explosions. It sounded like firecrackers going off in the air. The petals filled the air as Xiaoqin moved in the air. When he passed through the petals, his speed would increase explosively. The ferocious sabers could not catch up to him. Explode. There was no clear target in this place. Naturally, Xiaoqin could not execute Wukue supporting the heavens. He could only explode the energy. Xiaoqin shouted, and all the flower petals exploded. A huge amount of energy gathered together, and the entire gray space seemed to tremble. Quick! Quick! Find your saber. After Xiaoqin knocked back this wave of attacks, that urgent voice rang out in his ears again. He looked at the saber in his hand but still ignored it. The last time Xiaoqin saw through this sentence, he found the so-called saber in his heart. After that, he easily summoned out the lunar shadow saber. However, the voice rang out in his ears again and again. It was clear that the saber in his hand was not the saber in his heart. As Xiaoqin stood in this gray space, he ignored the voice in his ears. He knocked back the attacks of the sabers again and again. Each wave of attacks was more intense than the one before. Wounds started to appear on Xiaoqian's body. Just as Xiaoqin was about to reach his limit, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. After Xiaoqin repelled 100 waves of attacks, the scene before him suddenly changed. He felt his vision blur, and in the next moment, he appeared beside a lake. The full moon hung high in the night sky. The rippling lake water was very quiet. In the middle of the lake, there was a quiet saber floating on the water. The snow-white saber reflected the full moon in the sky. It was as if there was a full moon in the saber. It was quiet, melodious, and peaceful. The lake water, the full moon, and the saber all seemed very harmonious. It was magnificent. The wounds on Xiaoqian's body strangely disappeared. Xiaoqin did not care about this. He focused all his attention on that saber. A joyful expression appeared on Xiaoqian's face. He muttered, "Did I succeed? This is the true lunar shadow saber in my heart. How beautiful! Pooh! Pooh!" Xiaoqin leaped into the air and stepped on the water. He quickly headed for the saber floating in the water. Xiaoqin pushed off the water gently and moved 100 meters in one leap. After a while, he arrived below the saber. Ripples appeared on the lake water. Xiaoqin stopped and stood on the water. The full moon reflected on the saber was now clearly visible. Just as he was about to grab the saber, Xiaoqin, who was in the air, suddenly discovered a girl sleeping quietly under the water. Ao Jiao. When Xiaoqin saw the girl's appearance clearly, his expression changed greatly. He immediately turned around and dove into the water. He fell into the water, but when the beautiful woman in front of him reached her hand into the water, she only touched the ice-cold lake water. The rippling lake water made the girl sleeping in the water look hazy. Xiaoqin stopped moving and quickly calmed down. Ao Jiao has already entered a deep sleep and sealed herself. Hence, all I see is an illusion. I have to grab the saber before I can truly wake her up. After making up his mind, Xiaochen leaped out of the water and kicked up a splash. Then, he tried to grab the lunar shadow saber. Just as Xiaochen was about to grab the lunar shadow saber, a lily-white hand appeared out of nowhere. She grabbed the lunar shadow saber before Xiaochen could. Xiaochen was startled. He looked up and saw a white-clothed girl in front. Her figure was graceful. Her appearance was somewhat similar to Ao Jiao's. Her facial features were exquisite. When put together, they looked very beautiful. However, the expression on her face was somewhat otherworldly. There was no emotion at all. She was like a fairy who did not eat the food of the mortal world. She looked very similar to Duanmuking when he used the profound ice incantation. However, she seemed even more otherworldly than Duanmuking. Xiaochen was astonished. This girl was the one Xiaochen saw when he first entered the ancient absolute saber formation. Who is she? Why does she want to take away my lunar shadow saber? Chapter 338. The white-clothed girl held the lunar shadow saber in her hand. She looked very pretty. A hollow and clear voice rang out, "Who are you?" The lunar shadow saber's saber soul is not something you can casually obtain. Xiaochen felt it was strange. He said, "You ask me who I am? I should be the one asking you who you are. I am the master of the lunar shadow saber. Am I not qualified to awaken the saber soul?" The white-clothed girl's exquisite face remained expressionless. She held the saber in her hand across her chest and spoke again, "What a joke. I am the lunar shadow saber. How come I did not know that I had a master? Whether I am qualified or not is determined by the saber in my hand." Xiaochen's expression changed slightly. The situation had exceeded his expectations. He did not know why the girl in front of him had become the lunar shadow saber's saber spirit. Furthermore, she did not recognize him as her master. Xiaochen grasped the saber in his hand tightly. His expression calmed down as he said, "As you wish. I will let the saber in my hand make you submit completely." The white-clothed girl's face remained calm. Her voice resounded as she said indifferently, "In that case, let me see if your saber can make me submit completely." Hu Qi. The white-clothed sword spirit's figure flickered in the air. Her body tore through space as though she had teleported. Suddenly, she appeared on the left side of Xiaochen. Glittering Wukue. The lunar shadow saber in her hand released a purple electric light. A purple saber chi containing the state of thunder flew towards Xiaochen at lightning speed. Xiaochen was greatly astonished. He did not expect this saber spirit to know his martial technique. Furthermore, the most shocking thing was that this glittering Wukue also contained the state of thunder. Xiaochen's figure flashed in the air as he quickly dodged towards the surface of the lake. He stepped on the water and retreated quickly. As Xiaochen retreated, a huge force created 2 waves of water on the calm surface of the lake. 2 thunderclouds started to gather in the sky above. One belonged to Xiaochen and the other belonged to the white-clothed girl. The 2 of them started to compete with the state of thunder. When the thunderclouds clashed, there was a loud clap of thunder in the silent night sky. Pillars of water shot up from the surface of the lake, giving off loud bangs. In the air, countless streaks of purple lightning wandered wantonly in the air. My state of thunder merged with holy might is actually helpless against her state. Xiaochen was somewhat astonished. Boom! When the 2 thunderclouds collided, the accumulated energy reached its peak. There was a loud sound, and a 100-meter-tall pillar of water instantly shot up from the water. Wukue transforms to Qi. The white-clothed girl shouted and the divine Wukue tree appeared from nowhere. It turned into hundreds of dense purple saber Qi, piercing through the water pillar and flying at Xiaochen. Wukue transforms to Qi. Xiaochen quickly moved back and similarly executed Wukue transforms to Qi. Bang! 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 The saber Qi that the 2 of them sent out clashed in the air. Intense explosions resounded. The berserk lightning attributed energy in the air surged everywhere. This move was still evenly matched, no one could do anything to the other. The thunderclouds above the white-clothed girl started to churn quickly. After a while, they formed a huge whirlpool of thunderclouds. The ferocious roars of a vast army came from the whirlpool, causing the sky to tremble. Unexpectedly, she knows this move as well. Xiao Chen's complexion turned ashen. This move was a combination of all the moves of the rushing thunder saber technique. He was very clear on the might of the rushing thunder roars. The thunderclouds above them also churned. Boundless thunderclouds churned and formed a huge electric whirlpool. The auras of the two of them rose ferociously. Rushing thunder roars, 10,000 horses galloping. The two of them roared ferociously at the same time. Countless electric knights leaped down from the electric whirlpool above them. They were like a vast army, carrying the might of thunder as they surged over. On the surface of the lake, the two thunder and lightning knights fought against each other and exploded. After a while, there was a chain reaction. The 2,000-odd electric knights all exploded. These knights, which contained the state of thunder from both sides, created an energy that caused the surface of the lake to rise. It was as though the ground had been raised by 100 meters. A huge energy fluctuation spread out. Xiao Chen could not dodge in time and vomited a mouthful of blood. However, the white-clothed girl was not in a good state either. Her complexion turned extremely pale. At the same time, in the real world, the lunar shadow saber that Xiao Chen placed beside him started to tremble violently. All the weapons in the saber formation could not stop trembling as well. Rumble. A huge energy spread out in the dueling grounds. The entire ground shook left and right. Xiao Chen, who was in the ancient absolute saber formation, had a pained expression on his face. He vomited a mouthful of blood. Lu Suifeng's expression changed greatly. He asked in astonishment, "Sis, what's going on? Xiao Chen seems to be in danger. Should we stop the operation of the saber formation?" Lu Ryue's pretty face was filled with worry as well. However, her eyes were strangely resolute. She shook her head and said, "There is no need. I believe that Xiao Chen will be able to pull through. The lunar shadow saber is undergoing a transformation. If we give up now, all our efforts would be wasted. Kill." Xiao Chen's fighting spirit was completely ignited. He did not believe that he would lose to the weapon spirit of the lunar shadow saber. The two of them leaped into the air above the rising water. A white and a purple figure intertwined in the air. Dang! 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 Under the full moon, saber lights flickered and a strong wind blew. The two of them were comparable in speed. In an instant, they exchanged 100 moves in the air. When their weapons clashed, countless sparks flew. Although the white-clothed girl could not execute the movement technique that was exclusive to the blue dragon, she had her own movement technique. She seemed to be able to suppress Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen thought to himself, "I can't go on like this. Her essence seems to be inexhaustible. She knows all my martial techniques. It is hard for me to gain an advantage over her. If this drags on, I will exhaust my essence. Sooner or later, I will be defeated by her. I have to think of another way." Bang! Xiao Chen's sharp saber gave off a dazzling saber light. After he knocked back the white-clothed girl's saber strike, he quickly somersaulted. Xiao Chen executed the azure cloud soaring art to its limits. In the blink of an eye, he opened up a distance of several hundred meters. Xiao Chen pulled back the blue strip of cloth on his forehead. The scarlet throne mark on his forehead looked very alluring. It was even more beautiful than fresh blood. His delicate face immediately turned bewitching. In Xiao Chen's sea of consciousness, the scarlet throne started to surge. Strands of red light came from it. Xiao Chen finally used his true trump card, the state of massacre from the scarlet throne. A scarlet light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. As the state of massacre infused into the lunar shadow saber in his hand, strands of blood appeared. For the first time, the white-clothed girl revealed an expression of shock on her calm face. She felt a trace of fear. Hu Qi. Xiao Chen pushed off the water heavily. The state of thunder infused with the state of massacre carried a boundless killing intent as he charged forward. The white-clothed girl had a cautious expression. The lunar shadow saber in her hand glowed brightly, sending out resplendent purple saber chi. She stepped in front, trying to block Xiaochen. "Break!" Xiaochen shouted and a saber light flashed. The saber destroyed the sharp saber chi the white-clothed girl sent out, turning it into nothing. Xiaochen flicked his wrist and tilted his body slightly. From a tricky angle, he stabbed his saber at his opponent's chest. Dang! The white-clothed girl held her saber horizontally in front of her chest. When the huge force struck the saber, she was immediately knocked back and flew a long distance above the water. Xiaochen did not show mercy after gaining the upper hand. He swooped down and sent all sorts of sharp attacks at the white-clothed girl. Bang! 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 On the water, the white-clothed girl executed all sorts of techniques that Xiaochen used. However, after Xiaochen executed the state of massacre, all of them were easily shattered. Every move she made was broken. Her body, which was originally solid, slowly turned fainter, giving off an illusory feeling. The white-clothed girl was already in a losing situation. In less than 100 moves, she would be defeated by Xiaochen. However, even at this point, the white-clothed girl still did not submit. She brandished her saber to block Xiaochen's killing moves. Xiaochen lost his patience. He no longer wanted to waste time with her. All he wanted was to obtain the lunar shadow saber in her hands and wake up Ao Jiao. Just as Xiaochen was about to make a move to kill the white-clothed girl, a strong aura suddenly surged out from the lake. It covered the sky and the sun. A flood surged up and spread throughout the entire space. In an instant, it completely suppressed the state of thunder of Xiaochen and the white-clothed girl. Even Xiaochen's state of massacre was affected, he could not execute it normally. A huge whirlpool appeared in the middle of the lake. After a while, a pillar of water shot up into the sky. The water pillar was more than 500 meters long. The waves it kicked up were like rain falling onto the surface of the lake. A petite figure stood above the water pillar. It was Ao Jiao, who had woken up. Ao Jiao slowly floated down from the water pillar. Her voice came from above, "Xiaochen, don't kill her." Since Ao Jiao spoke, naturally, Xiaochen would not kill her. He sheathed his saber and retreated. When he saw Ao Jiao slowly land on the water surface, he said, "Ao Jiao, what's going on?" Unexpectedly, there are two weapon spirits in the lunar shadow saber. Ao Jiao was about to speak when she saw the thrown mark on Xiaochen's forehead. Her expression immediately changed. She said sullenly, "Wait a moment. I will tell you in detail. You have to tell me about the massacre thrown on your forehead later as well." Chi. Right after Ao Jiao spoke, she shifted her gaze to the white-clothed girl. She stretched out her hand and pointed. The white-clothed girl's body became very faint, looking very illusory. The lunar shadow saber in the white-clothed girl's hand fell, and the illusory figure slowly sank to the bottom of the lake. Xiao. Ao Jiao stretched out her hand and grasped the slender lunar shadow saber. Boom! The towering water pillar crashed down. The waves on the lake surged for a long time before they slowly calmed down. "Let's talk on the shore." After Ao Jiao spoke, she pushed off the water and headed for the lakeside. When Xiaochen heard this, he did not say anything. He quickly followed. The two of them landed on a rock by the lakeside and found a clean spot to sit down. The waves on the lake's surface had disappeared. Now, it was calm once again. Under the light of the moon, it was quiet and peaceful. Ao Jiao smiled gently and said, "All right, idiot master. You can ask me any questions now." Xiaochen smiled gently. Ao Jiao was still the same as before, not giving him any face at all. She did not care about her master at all. However, Ao Jiao's attitude was much more amiable than the white-clothed girl earlier. Her tone sounded more like a casual call from a girl. Xiaochen organized his thoughts and asked, "Let's start with the white-clothed girl. How did she become the Lunar Shadow Saber's weapon spirit? Furthermore, she does not recognize me as her master. Chapter 339. Ao Jiao smiled mischievously and said, "This is called a long story. Let me explain it to you in detail. I will only say it once. If you do not understand, then don't ask." Ao Jiao said she would only say it once, so she would really only say it once. Xiaochen could not do anything to her, he could only perk up his ears and listen carefully. The materials and methods used to forge the Lunar Shadow Saber are the best. However, the conditions for a weapon spirit are too harsh. I originally thought that it would be impossible for the Lunar Shadow Saber to form its own weapon spirit, so I sealed myself in it. However, things surpassed my expectations. While I was asleep, the weapon spirit in this Lunar Shadow Saber started to slowly form. It has been in a state of coexistence with me. At that time, although I had sealed myself, I could split out some energy to suppress her, not letting her take the initiative. However, after she forcefully woke me up, I exhausted too much energy and fell into a deep sleep. In an instant, she took the initiative. If it were not for the battle between you and her exhausting too much energy, it would have taken me a long time to wake up. Xiaochen suddenly understood. So that was the case. He had always found it strange. With Ao Jiao's strength, how could another weapon spirit take over the Lunar Shadow Saber's saber soul? Then why does she not recognize me as her master? Furthermore, she seems to be hostile towards me. Ao Jiao explained, all weapon spirits are like this. This is the weapon spirit's way of protecting itself. When I was first born, I was unhappy with the Thunder King. If you were not strong enough, why would a weapon spirit recognize you as its master? However, once a weapon spirit recognizes a master, it will be loyal for life and will never betray you. Xiaochen said doubtfully, in that case, what is your relationship with me now? You are much stronger than me. Doesn't that mean I will not be able to let you make decisions for a long time? Ao Jiao smiled and said, yes, so stupid master, you should quickly become stronger. If you can't even protect me, how can you be my master? Xiaochen was speechless. Based on the strength that Ao Jiao displayed, she was at least a superior grade martial monarch. Xiaochen did not know when he would be able to reach that level. Looking at Xiaochen's pondering expression, Ao Jiao giggled and said, get up, stupid master. Don't think too much about it. I will first merge my saber soul with the Lunar Shadow Saber in your hand. Then, you will be able to enter the state of listening to the sword and communicating with it. Xiaochen got up and looked at the Lunar Shadow Saber in Ao Jiao's hand. He asked in disbelief, it's that simple? Back then, for Xiaochen to grasp listening to the sword and communicating with it, she had put in a lot of effort. However, she had not succeeded. In the end, she could only touch the edges and was unable to enter the next level. Ao Jiao smiled and said, that girl's method was correct. However, she did not take into account that there was another weapon spirit in your saber. The weapon spirit has an innate ability to protect itself and rejected your call. Hence, you have not been able to enter the next level. No wonder Xiaochen kept feeling like he was pacing back and forth outside the door to listening to the sword and communicating with it. However, he could not push the door open. It turned out that this door was blocked by someone else. Hu Qi. Ao Jiao raised her hand and fired. The slender Lunar Shadow Saber soared into the boundless sky. Spots of purple light surrounded it. Under the illumination of the moonlight, it looked very beautiful. The saber flew higher and higher. Soon, Xiaochen could only see a blurry black figure. Xiaochen looked up and asked, where is this flying to? How are we going to merge it? Ao Jiao said, of course, it is flying to the real world. Otherwise, why do you think we are merging it in the space within the Lunar Shadow Saber? Alright, when you get out, you will understand immediately. Now, it is time for you to tell me about the massacre throne. Xiaochen withdrew his gaze and thought for a while. He decided to tell the truth. There was no need to hide these things from Ao Jiao. After Xiaochen told her everything that happened in the Ink Forest, he asked, Ao Jiao, is there anything wrong with this Scarlet Throne? After Ao Jiao heard everything, she thought for a while before answering, "There is nothing wrong with it." The Scarlet Throne was personally refined by the ancient evil king. However, before he was killed, he split the throne into 6. Each throne represents a will. They are the will of massacre, the will of destruction, the will of destruction, the will of rage, the will of berserk, and the will of death. According to rumor, when the 6 thrones merge together, the ancient evil king will rule the world once again. Xiao Chen muttered, "Are you saying that there are 5 other thrones? I only obtained 1. In that case, what should I do if I run into someone else with a throne?" Ao Jiao nodded and said, "That is the crux of the problem. As long as 2 cultivators with thrones are within 500 kilometers of each other, they will be able to sense each other's presence. The thrones are originally 1, so they can swallow each other up. After swallowing, the might of the throne will increase greatly." Without needing Ao Jiao to explain, Xiao Chen already knew how much the swallowing of a throne would increase its strength. Each throne represented a state. Grasping 2 high-leveled states at the same time, the might of the throne went without saying. Xiao Chen did not fear competition from others. However, he was worried about what Ao Jiao said about the throne merging and the evil king's rebirth. He felt that it was strange. How reliable are the rumors? It has already been 30,000 years since the people of the ancient era. Could they have returned? Xiao Chen asked doubtfully. The Tianwu dynasty had existed for 20,000 years. It was destroyed 10,000 years ago, resulting in the current situation of the great Jin nation dominating the continent. Before the Tianwu dynasty, there was a chaotic period. There were no detailed records of it in the history books. The period before the chaotic period was the true ancient era. It was hard to imagine. After 30,000 years, even the sea could turn into mulberry fields. Could humans still be revived? Ao Jiao said, "The rumors are still credible. However, you don't have to worry too much. In the past 10,000 years, I have never heard of 6 thrones appearing at the same time. It is impossible for it to happen to you so coincidentally." Rumble. Rumbling sounds appeared in the sky. Xiao Chen looked up and saw that the lunar shadow saber had already flown to the edge of space. It was continuously breaking through the barriers of space. Ao Jiao said softly, "The lunar shadow saber's saber soul is coming out soon. You have to go as well. After you go out, remember to comprehend listening to the sword and communicating with it properly. This is just getting you started." Xiao Chen felt that there were still many things he had not said. He quickly thought about it and said the most important thing, "In that case, can I wake you up at any time in the future?" Ao Jiao shook her head and said, "That won't do. I have to take this opportunity to swallow up the white-robed weapon spirit to prevent any future problems. Don't forget, my goal is to forge a subdivine weapon. Right now, it is far from enough." In the real world, in the dueling grounds, the saber formation did not stop shaking at all. The lunar shadow saber beside Xiao Chen's hand leaped up and struggled free of its scabbard. With a "so" sound, it flew into the air and floated quietly 100 meters above Xiao Chen's head. It gave off a bright light and looked very beautiful. Lu Suifeng asked in astonishment, "Sis, what's going on? Why did the lunar shadow saber fly out by itself?" Lu Ruyue revealed a suspicious expression as well. She shook her head and said, "I am not sure either. However, I feel that this should be a good thing and not a bad thing. I can feel that the lunar shadow saber has a faint excitement, like it is anticipating something." As the two of them spoke, a beam of light leaped out from Xiao Chen's head. Then, it flew into the lunar shadow saber at lightning speed. Xiao! Xiao Chen suddenly opened his eyes and leaped up. His body was like a flood dragon as he grabbed the hilt of the lunar shadow saber. Listening to the sword and communicating with it, Xiao Chen shouted and brandished his saber. The snow-white blade of the lunar shadow saber immediately gave off a drawn-out hum. The blade of the saber trembled uncontrollably. There was a flash of light and the snow-white blade turned pitch-black once again. It had actually advanced from an Earth-ranked spirit weapon to an inferior-grade Heaven-ranked spirit weapon. Shao Chen held the lunar shadow saber and landed on the ground. He revealed a joyful expression. The lunar shadow saber finally gave off a sound that belonged to it. He did not expect that after using listening to the sword and communicating with it, the lunar shadow saber's spirit weapon rank would actually recover to its original state. Hu Qi. Shao Chen moved his wrist gently and circulated the essence in his body. A strong force immediately came from the sharp blade. A strand of extremely dense purple saber qi broke through the blade and created ripples in the air. When it landed, it left behind a long mark. Bang! 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 After the saber qi stopped, the ground beside the mark immediately flew up and exploded into powder in the air. Lu Suifeng said in astonishment, "What a strong might! Is this the original strength of the lunar shadow saber? It seems to be much stronger than a regular heaven-ranked spirit weapon." All it took was a casual wave. Shao Chen casually waved his hand and the scabbard in the saber formation appeared in his hand. He gently dispersed the state of listening to the sword and communicating with it. The pitch-black blade immediately turned snow-white once again, returning to being an earth-ranked spirit weapon. Shao Chen had just comprehended listening to the sword and communicating with it. He could not maintain this state for a long time. However, after he started, he believed that he would improve very quickly in the future. Shao Chen sheathed his saber and looked at Lu Riyue, who was walking over with a smile. He said sincerely, "Riyue, thank you." Lu Riyue felt happy for Shao Chen. She said seriously, "Congratulations, you finally grasped listening to the sword and communicating with it." Qingyun Peak, Shao Chen was in his independent courtyard. A cool breeze blew through the courtyard, lifting up the fallen leaves. Shao Chen had his eyes closed and was in a mysterious state. His expression was calm as he placed his right hand on the saber hilt. He did not care about his aura. He allowed his aura and the cool breeze in the courtyard to fluctuate as they pleased, rising and falling, appearing very casual. Suddenly, Shao Chen opened his eyes and a bright light shot out from them. It was like a sharp saber piercing through everything in front of him. Ka Xie. The lunar shadow saber was instantly drawn and listening to the sword and communicating with it was executed. The snow-white blade immediately turned pitch black. This was a characteristic of a heaven-ranked spirit weapon. It was automatic. The instant the lunar shadow saber was drawn, there was no circulation of essence. A long strand of saber qi automatically flowed out from the sharp blade. With a "so" sound, it shattered several fallen leaves in the cool breeze. Listening to the sword and communicating with it had a total of 4 realms: listening to the sword, controlling the sword, sword heart, and communicating with it. Shao Chen was still at the listening to the sword realm. This allowed him to thoroughly understand his own weapon. This feeling was very wondrous. When Shao Chen held the lunar shadow saber in his hand, he felt that the lunar shadow saber was like an extension of his arm. Chapter 340. Shao Chen could feel every pulse of the saber. There seemed to be blood flowing in it. Of course, that was not real blood but spiritual energy flowing in the saber vein. Without comprehending listening to the sword and communicating with it, no matter how strong a person was, they would not be able to feel the pulse of the saber. As the essence slowly poured in, Shao Chen could clearly see his purple essence flowing in the saber vein. With a thought, the saber lit up with a bright purple light. Withdraw. With another thought, the purple saber light immediately stopped. There was no separation at all. The circulation of the essence was faster than before. After dispelling the state of listening to the sword and communicating with it, the saber immediately turned snow-white again. Just like that, Shao Chen repeatedly used listening to the sword and communicating with it in the courtyard. Earlier in the dueling grounds, after Lu Riyue spoke to him, she immediately left. Shao Chen felt that something was wrong. However, he did not know what was wrong. Hence, he did not intend to continue staying in the dueling grounds. Instead, he returned to the courtyard and tried to practice listening to the sword and communicating with it. He wanted to reach the stage of listening to the sword as soon as possible and enter the state of controlling the sword. That way, it would be of great help in battle. Shao Chen practiced until dusk. When Bai returned, Xiao Chen stopped practicing. He saw that Bai's hair had been trimmed up very well. She had 2 small braids on her forehead. The black hair at the back was tied up in a complicated fashion. Finally, she used a green hair clip to hold it up. This brought out Bai's delicate and pretty temperament, completely covering up her charm. It looks like this Xiao Meng is really attentive. Bai smiled gently at the side. Elder brother Xiao Chen, are you practicing? Bai has to practice as well. After she is done, she can protect elder brother Xiao Chen. When Xiao Chen heard this, he thought it made sense. After spirit beasts took human forms, they could practice human martial techniques and cultivation techniques. It was necessary to teach her some martial techniques for self-defense. In the universe ring, there were many spirit weapons that Xiao Chen had looted from the Jiang clan's treasure trove. Xiao Chen took them out one by one. There were sabers, dual sabers, short swords, dual sabers, and countless swords. Choose a weapon first. What kind of weapon do you like? Then, I'll help you find a martial technique. Bai picked and chose among the large pile of soul weapons, and finally chose a sword that was 2 fingers wide and 5 feet long. This sword was called Skywater, and it was a high-grade profound rank soul weapon. Brother Xiao Chen, I choose this one, Bai said with a smile. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. He hoped that Bai would choose a saber. That way, it would be easier to find the secret manuals. The huge heavenly saber pavilion might lack many things, but it did not lack saber-related secret manuals. Furthermore, the heavenly saber pavilion revered the saber. To a certain degree, swords were taboo. Even the heavenly saber pavilion's pavilion master, who once shook the world, had only used a piece of wood to carve a sword for the sake of cultivating the sword in his later years. Suddenly, Xiao Chen's eyes lit up. He recalled that aside from the great dragon tiger fist and the dragon and tiger body sculpting art, the pavilion master had also left behind a heart-nourishing universe sword technique. This was a good chance for Bai to use. Xiao Chen rummaged around in the universe ring for a while before he finally found the heart-nourishing universe sword technique in a corner. Xiao Chen handed the secret manual over and said, "This secret manual is for you. Take it and read it first. If you have anything you don't understand, you can ask me." The heart-nourishing universe sword technique was a peak earth-ranked sword technique. In terms of might, it was not much weaker than Xiao Chen's Wukuei saber technique. After all, a martial technique that the pavilion master collected would not be something that an ordinary cultivator could find. Bai received it joyfully. She smiled and said, "Thank you, elder brother Xiao Chen. I will go and read it now. I will master it in 2 days. At that time, I will be able to protect elder brother Xiao Chen." As Xiao Chen watched Bai leave, he revealed a faint smile. This girl is too naive. Xiao Chen had seen a little of the heart-nourishing universe sword technique before. There was a total of 13 moves. Each move was harder to practice than the one before. The difficulty was comparable to the Wukuei saber technique. Back then, Xiao Chen had spent 3 days and only managed to learn the first 3 moves of the Wukuei saber technique. He was not even familiar with the 8th move. As for the 9th move, he had never thought of practicing it. How could Bai possibly learn all 13 moves of the heart-nourishing universe sword technique in 2 days? The days slowly went by. Xiao Chen practiced the Wukuei saber technique in the morning. In the afternoon, he practiced listening to the sword and communicating with it. At night, he cultivated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation's 5th layer, preparing to break through to the 6th layer. Time passed very quickly. Aside from the necessary rest time to prevent his body from overworking itself, Xiao Chen spent the rest of his time cultivating. Xiao Chen worked so hard for the sake of the end-of-year inner disciple ranking competition in a month's time. If nothing unexpected happened, he would help Qingyun Peak obtain the first rank to repay Lu Ryue's kindness. 6 days later, Xiao Chen was trying to practice the Wukuei saber technique's 8th move, Wukuei opens heaven, in the back mountains. However, he could not merge the state and the mysterious phenomenon. He could not reach great perfection. Elder brother Xiao Chen, I succeeded in practicing the heart-nourishing universe sword technique, Bai said excitedly as she rushed over to Xiaochen. When Xiaochen heard this, he was startled. He was incomparably astonished. That is impossible. I have never heard of anyone being able to learn a peak Earth-ranked martial technique within 6 days. Execute it once for me to see, Xiaochen decided to verify its authenticity. Bai nodded her head heavily and drew the heavenly water sword. She brandished her sword, and her petite and exquisite figure moved quickly in the forest. In the forest, as Little White executed the heart-nourishing universe sword technique, the laws of heaven and earth seemed to become a little chaotic in an instant. As the sword moved, the surrounding trees actually moved strangely. However, these trees were still full of life. There were no strange phenomena. It was like the world spun around and space turned chaotic, resulting in such an effect. Xiaochen's expression started to turn grave. He saw an indistinct blurry light at Bai's chest as the sword light danced. The shape of the light seemed to be the silhouette of a small sword. Sword heart. Xiaochen blurted out in astonishment. Heaven was the sky, earth was the earth. After the heart-nourishing universe sword technique was executed, it would incorporate the heavens and earth into the sword technique. Every move of the heart-nourishing universe sword technique contained the heavenly Tao. When practiced to great perfection, it could even reverse the heavens and earth, truly changing the laws of heaven and earth. However, the crux of the heart-nourishing universe sword technique was the word, nourishing the heart. This so-called nourishing the heart was to use the power of the heavens and earth to temper an unparalleled sword heart with an absolute sharpness. As far as Xiaochen knew, although there were very few people who could practice the heart-nourishing universe sword technique to great perfection, there had been some sword sages in history. With one sword strike, they could make rivers flow backward, tear through space, and cause tall mountains to spin. However, aside from the person who created this sword technique, Xiaochen had never heard of anyone else successfully tempering their sword heart. Bai executed the 13 moves of the heart-nourishing universe sword technique one by one. Sword chi surged in the forest, and countless fallen leaves flew everywhere. Bai sheathed his sword. The chaotic feeling of the forest spinning around him immediately vanished. He looked at Xiaochen's silent appearance. Bai said somewhat nervously, "Xiaochen, is Bai stupid? I said I would learn it in 2 days, but in the end, I spent 6. Furthermore, it seems like I have not used it yet." Xiaochen smiled bitterly to himself. If you are considered stupid, then how are the geniuses of the world supposed to live? This sword technique could only be considered a beginner. This was because the range that Bai could influence in the realm of heaven and earth was not very large. It could only be maintained within 10 meters of him. According to the records of the sword technique, when a martial saint practiced the heart-nourishing universe sword technique to great perfection, the range of influence could reach up to 500 meters. Bai was still far from that. Furthermore, he had not merged it with the state. This caused the might of the sword technique to be greatly reduced. However, to be able to use only 6 days to execute this sword technique and comprehend the sword heart, such a talent was simply horrifying. What Bai lacked now was only mastery and comprehension of his state. At that time, the might of the sword technique could be considered to have reached great perfection. Xiaochen smiled gently and said, "No, it is already pretty good. However, you still have to continue working hard. You are still lacking some mastery." Bai smiled joyfully and said, "Really? In that case, when can I be as strong as elder brother Xiaochen?" At that time, when there are bad people, there will be no need for elder brother Xiaochen to make a move. Bai will help you chase them away. Xiaochen smiled speechlessly. He thought to himself, why did I let Bai protect me? I should not have let Bai practice martial techniques. Actually, it was for her own sake. As for Bai's future, Xiaochen already had a rough plan in his heart. However, he could not tell her about it for now. Go back first. Don't think too much. Remember not to let others see you practicing the sword technique, Xiaochen said. After all, practicing the sword technique in the heavenly saber pavilion was a taboo. Bai nodded and walked back in high spirits. She was clearly in high spirits. Seeing Bai leave, Xiaochen withdrew his gaze and said indifferently, Bai is already so powerful. I have to work even harder. I cannot let her leave me behind. I have to completely grasp Wukue opens heaven. 3 days later, Lu Suifeng came to Xiao Chen's courtyard and told him a piece of shocking news. When Xiao Chen heard the news, he felt very suspicious. He asked, "You said that the end of your inner disciple ranking war scheduled for the middle of next month has been delayed? Why is it like this?" Lu Suifeng was confused as well. "I am not sure either. The people from the Elders' Assembly did not say the exact reason. The end of your inner disciple ranking war has been a tradition of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion since it was founded. In the past 10,000 years, unless something major happened, I have never heard of the ranking war being delayed. The purpose of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's annual inner disciple ranking war was not just to check the cultivation results of the inner disciples. It was also to maintain a healthy competition among the inner disciples. The most important thing was that the Heavenly Saber Pavilion would make use of this opportunity to display the strength of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion to the world. It would ensure its reputation as the top sect in the Shiha province. Every year, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion would send out invitations to the various powers and youths of the Shiha province. Even the officials would be invited. The purpose of this was to display the strength of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion and protect its reputation. If they suddenly delayed the end of your inner disciple ranking war, it would cause others to suspect that the Heavenly Saber Pavilion did not have any worthy inner disciples. That was why they delayed it. Chapter 341. All these unfavorable events were a huge blow to the reputation of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Unless they had no other choice, they would not postpone the competition. Lu Suifeng continued, "This matter is very strange. Until now, there are no leads. Furthermore, even the outer disciple competition was postponed. This is very confusing." Xiao Chen thought for a while and said, "There is no need to care about it. It is only postponed, not cancelled." "That's right, why have I not seen elder sister Ryue recently?" Lu Suifeng hesitated for a while before saying, "Actually, the last time she used the strengthened ancient absolute saber formation, her essence was greatly injured. She will not be able to cultivate for half a year. Recently, she has been consuming spirit herbs to nourish herself. Otherwise, the losses would be even greater." Xiao Chen was greatly startled. He had felt that something was wrong the last time. It turned out to be so serious. Naturally, Xiao Chen knew the severity of the matter. He did not expect Lu Ryue to make such a huge sacrifice for him. "Why did you not tell me earlier?" Xiao Chen said with some blame. If he had known there would be such serious consequences, Xiao Chen would not have accepted it. Lu Suifeng smiled helplessly. "I wanted to tell you, but my sister did not let me. Furthermore, even if I told you, would you still accept this kindness?" Xiao Chen shook his head and wanted to get up to look for Lu Ryue. Lu Suifeng quickly stopped him and said, "Don't go. My sister is very headstrong. Since she does not want you to know, just pretend that you do not know." Xiao Chen had no choice but to sit back down. The two of them chatted for a while before Lu Suifeng got up and took his leave. Xiao Chen did not feel anything about the inner disciple ranking competition being postponed. As long as it was not cancelled, it was fine. He was not in a rush to leave Qingyun Peak anyway. On the other hand, Lu Ryue had wasted half a year for him. This made him feel uneasy. If he still could not guess what Lu Ryue was thinking, he would be a fool. Everyone had emotions and desires. No one could truly transcend time. How could one pretend to be relaxed in the mortal world? That night, Xiao Chen stopped cultivating. He leaped up and landed on a big tree outside Lu Ryue's courtyard. The bright moonlight shone on the ground. Lu Ryue was in the courtyard, practicing her saber techniques as usual. Saber lights filled the place and energy surged. Now that Lu Ryue was a martial king, she could see that her saber chi was much purer than before. As the saber chi flew through the air, even the air seemed to be sliced apart, forming blurry ripples. Hu chi. Without any warning, a strand of resplendent saber chi suddenly flew towards the tree where Xiao Chen was. It covered the distance of 500 meters in an instant. With a cracking sound, the thick tree was immediately cut in half, revealing Xiao Chen, who was hiding behind the tree. Lu Riyue flew over and saw that it was Xiao Chen hiding behind the tree. She heaved a sigh of relief and sheathed her saber. She asked, "Yi Chen, why are you hiding behind the tree?" Xiao Chen felt extremely embarrassed, and his delicate face immediately flushed red. His usual calmness had long since been lost somewhere. There was nothing more embarrassing than being caught peeping at someone. Xiao Chen stood on the broken tree and stammered for a long time before saying, "Indeed, why am I hiding here? This question is really strange." Lu Riyue looked at the embarrassed Xiao Chen and found it very funny. She smiled and said, "Actually, this tree has a heavenly spiritual energy. When one stands on it, one can calm down. It is a good place to comprehend bottlenecks." "Yi Chen, you are comprehending a martial technique, right?" Xiao Chen slowly calmed down and smiled, "That's right. I did not expect Riyue to know this secret as well. This tree is indeed very useful. I nearly broke through my bottleneck." Lu Riyue's flirtatious face revealed a mischievous smile. She said seriously, "In that case, I have to apologize to you. I should not have interrupted you earlier and even broken this spiritual tree. I am truly sorry." Lu Riyue's tone caused Xiao Chen's flustered heart to calm down. He smiled faintly and said, "It's fine. The tree was broken, and the spiritual energy leaked out. It is a good opportunity to break through my bottleneck. However, this tree will be useless in the future." Lu Riyue nodded and said, "In that case, you should properly comprehend your bottleneck. I will come back tomorrow morning to take a look." Xiao Chen sweated profusely in his heart. This meant that he had to stand on this broken tree for an entire night. This tree did not really have spiritual energy. Even if he stood on it without moving, he would feel uncomfortable. "Hu Qi." Xiao Chen leaped down from the broken tree and landed gently in front of Lu Riyue. Lu Riyue nodded and smiled, "Young hero Yi, why are you not continuing to comprehend your bottleneck?" Xiao Chen smiled embarrassedly, "Riyue, can you stop laughing at me?" Lu Riyue burst out laughing and said, "All right, I won't laugh at you anymore. Go in, then. Why are you looking for me?" After they sat down in Lu Riyue's courtyard, Xiao Chen told her about what Lu Suifeng had told him. He told her about the matter of the inner disciple ranking competition being delayed. Lu Riyue said softly, "I know about this. There is no special reason for anyone to hold the inner disciple ranking competition. The manpower and resources required are huge. It would require the entire sect to do so. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion is unable to hold two grand events in such a short period of time." Xiao Chen felt suspicious and asked, "Are you saying that there is something even grander than the inner disciple ranking competition? What is it?" Lu Riyue nodded and said, "This matter is a secret for now. However, there is no problem telling you. Leng Liusu came out of closed-door cultivation. She is already a peak inferior grade martial king." Xiao Chen was slightly stunned before he reacted. Leng Liusu was only 17 years old and she was already a peak inferior grade martial king. Aside from the word demonic, there was no other way to describe her talent. This was a realm that ordinary people could not reach in their lifetime. Unexpectedly, she did it at the age of 17. Furthermore, she was not just a martial king but a peak inferior grade martial king. The earlier a person became a martial king, the higher their future achievements would be. This was something that had already been proven. Back then, the Thunder King also became a martial king at the age of 17. At the age of 20, he became a martial monarch. At the age of 30, he saw through life and death and became a martial sage. At the age of 40, he became a martial emperor, ruling over the world. There were many experts in history. All of them had different characteristics. However, they all had one thing in common. They all became martial kings before the age of 20. If a cultivator could not become a martial king before the age of 25, their future achievements would be limited to that of a martial king. Back then, Murong Chong had told Xiao Chen some things about Leng Liusu. He said that when she came out of closed-door cultivation, she would shock the world. It looked like it was true. The bloodline of the Saber Emperor was truly shocking. Lu Riyue continued, the first elder has already sent people to inform the three holy masters. He wants to make use of this opportunity to get the people from the three holy masters to come and help the heavenly saber pavilion seal the spatial crack. The people from the three holy masters will come as well? Xiaochen finally understood why the end-of-year inner disciple ranking competition was delayed. If the three holy masters really came, the inner disciple ranking competition would be insignificant. The three holy masters transcended the world. The legends of the three holy masters were spread all over the Tianwu continent. In the eyes of the people, they were an untouchable legend. They had existed since the ancient era. After tens of thousands of years, their strength was unfathomable. They were the last hope of the Tianwu continent. There were several known times in history, and in the end, it was always the three holy lands who led the people to repel the demon race, continuing the seed of humanity. The arrival of the three holy masters would definitely shock the entire Great Qin nation. At that time, all the noble clans and sects in the Great Qin nation would come to pay their respects. If the geniuses of the various clans caught the eyes of the three holy masters, they would be very lucky. With the Holy Land taking care of them, their status would automatically rise. The three holy lands, Phoenix's Passion Palace, White Emperor City, and Divine Martial Gate. Xiaochen did not know why, but he instinctively felt a little repulsed by them. Furthermore, he was a transmigrator. He did not have any intention of worshipping them, so he was not interested. However, the opportunity to see the strength of the people from the Holy Lands piqued Xiaochen's interest. He wanted to see how strong a holy soul cultivator with an unbroken inheritance was. After thinking for a while, Xiaochen said, "Will the three holy masters come? If they come, which holy land will they go to? Phoenix's Passion Palace, White Emperor City, or Divine Martial Gate?" Lu Riyue replied, "It is very likely that they will come. The three holy masters have been searching for geniuses all over the continent. With Leng Liusu's talent, she will definitely attract them. As for which holy land, I am not sure." After this topic ended, the two of them chatted for a long time. There were several times when Xiaochen could not help but ask about her wasting half a year. However, he resisted in the end. Since Lu Riyue was not willing to talk about it, he would just bury this topic in his heart and keep it to himself. As the night grew darker, Xiaochen stood up and took his leave. He said, "I will go back first. No matter what, I will definitely obtain the top rank of the inner sect disciple rankings for Qingyun Peak." Lu Riyue smiled gently and said, "In that case, I thank you for your promise in advance. However, if you want to come and see me in the future, just come in directly. Although there are many trees here, not all of them are filled with spiritual energy." Xiaochen smiled faintly and said, "There's no need. I have already passed my bottleneck. To me, trees are no longer important." After the two of them spoke, they looked at each other and smiled gently. There was no need for words. To Xiaochen, trees were indeed no longer important. Lu Riyue had not only chopped down a tree outside the courtyard, she had also chopped down a barrier in Xiaochen's heart. Since he liked her in his heart, then he should step forward openly. There was no need to suppress his feelings and think of all the worries. There was no need to be conflicted over whether to meet her or not. Regardless of whether he left Qingyun Peak or not, the person he loved was here. There was a worry in his heart. No matter where she went, they would know each other. After walking out of Lu Riyue's courtyard, Xiaochen felt as though a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. He felt very comfortable. Although the two of them did not say it out loud, there was a kind of silent tacit understanding between them. They both knew each other's intentions. Xiaochen slowly walked on the mountain path in the forest. Under the moonlight, he looked up and revealed a faint smile on his face. In the following days, aside from cultivating diligently every day, Xiaochen would take some time out to come to Lu Riyue's courtyard at night. The two of them chatted about everything under the sun. There was nothing they did not talk about. They chatted happily. However, They mostly talked about their understanding of the martial way. Lu Rue's accumulations as a martial saint were deep. This was especially so with her experience of breaking through to Martial King twice. She told Xiaochen everything he needed to pay attention to when breaking through. Chapter 342. Advancing from Martial Saint to Martial King was a huge hurdle for early-stage cultivators. Once one crossed it, one would be able to enjoy the treatment of an expert anywhere in the great Qin nation. The earlier one crossed it, the higher one's future accomplishments would be. Xiaochen also told Lu Rue about his comprehension of states, Xiaochen's understanding of states. Now, aside from some of the older generation experts, no one in the younger generation could compare to him in the great Qin nation. This allowed Lu Rue to benefit a lot from it. When they got excited, it was hard to avoid arguments. The two of them would compare notes with each other, perfecting their understandings through actual combat. This kind of exchange was much more useful than Xiaochen's usual thinking. After a week, Xiaochen actually managed to completely comprehend the Wukue opens heaven, which he had been unable to perfect in the past. The substantial gains in his cultivation allowed Xiaochen to immerse himself in this kind of exchange. He would go to Lu Rue's courtyard almost every night. On this particular day, as the two of them were chatting happily, there was a sudden explosion in the sky thousands of meters above the heavenly saber pavilion. In the dark night, 7 huge meteors descended from the sky above Qingyun Peak. As they descended, they destroyed the 81 restrictions that the heavenly saber pavilion laid in the sky. Ear-piercing alarms reverberated throughout the entire Lingyun mountain range. It was as though there was an emergency. It rang out continuously. Who? Who? Occasionally, figures would soar into the sky from the 7 main peaks of the heavenly saber pavilion. A strong aura reverberated in the surroundings. Their fighting spirits soared, causing people to tremble in fear. The expressions of Xiaochen and Lu Rue changed. Unexpectedly, someone dared to barge into the heavenly saber pavilion so brazenly. Lu Rue had a grave expression as she looked at the summit of Qingyun Peak. She said, "Neither of us should act rashly. A battle of this level is not something we can participate in." Even without Lu Rue saying anything, Xiaochen could feel that horrifying pressure. The 7 meteors contained the aura of a martial monarch. Just thinking about it caused one to tremble in fear. There were only 10 known martial monarchs in the entire Great Qin nation. However, at this moment, 7 martial monarchs arrived at the heavenly saber pavilion. The strength of one martial monarch could easily destroy a city. With 7 martial monarchs, they would be able to defeat an army of 1,000,000. Martial monarch, the monarch of martial arts, was not a title that could be casually given. Even in the Great Qin nation, which had many spirit veins, a martial monarch was considered an expert. Furthermore, in the Great Qin nation, there had been no news of a martial sage appearing in the past 1,000 years. Martial monarchs were already the peak combat power. If any sect or clan had a martial monarch, they would immediately become a first-rate faction. As for the figures that soared into the sky from the 7 main peaks, they were all superior-grade martial kings. Given Xiaochen's cultivation, if he rushed up, the shock waves of the battle could crush him to pieces. Xiaochen did not know how many martial monarchs the heavenly saber pavilion had. With this sudden crisis, he could clearly see the trump cards of the heavenly saber pavilion. Xiaochen looked at the sky and asked doubtfully, "Why are these people here?" Lu Rue muttered, "Divine weapon." Boom! The 7 meteors in the sky pierced through the restrictions of the heavenly saber pavilion. A fiery light spread out and countless sparks quickly shot into the sky. Bang! 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 The sparks fell like rain, covering nearly half of the heavenly saber pavilion. There were intense explosions on the ground. Surging shockwaves spread out and dust filled the air. Countless buildings were destroyed, turning into rubble. Many cultivators were struck by the sparks. Before they could react, they were blasted to pieces, dying without a complete corpse. The entire heavenly saber pavilion was in chaos. Many places were set on fire and the fire immediately spread. Sparks flew towards Lu Rue's courtyard. When they saw the energy contained in the sparks, the two of them did not dare to clash head-on. They executed their movement techniques and dodged quickly. In the next moment, the previously perfectly fine courtyard was blasted beyond recognition. The shockwaves carried countless rocks over. The two of them turned around and sent out a few sharp saber chi, reducing the flying shockwaves and rocks to dust. After the sparks scattered, 7 middle-aged men in azure robes appeared before the crowd. 9 blue dragons were embroidered on their robes. The 7 of them emitted an overwhelming aura. Even Xiao Qin, who was a kilometer underground, felt a huge pressure. Many of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciples on the ground who were looking up could not withstand this pressure. They fell to the ground, not even having the strength to get up. The aura of the 7 martial monarchs was equal to that of a martial sage. It could even stop the flow of a river, what more these martial saint cultivators? Who dares barge into my Heavenly Saber Pavilion? Are you reckless? Hundreds of martial kings from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion flew over. The person leading them did not show any fear when facing the 7 martial monarchs. Are you even worthy of speaking to us? One of the 7 green-robed martial monarchs snorted coldly and pointed. A ripple appeared in the air. After a while, it turned into a whirlpool and surged forward. Bang! The person who spoke was struck by the whirlpool and immediately vomited a mouthful of blood. He cried out miserably as he fell from the sky. A bona fide peak martial king could not even retaliate before a martial monarch. He was defeated with just a finger. This was truly frightening. When Xiao Qin felt the intense fluctuations in space, he said indifferently, "This is the power of space. Martial monarchs and martial kings are simply not on the same level. All of you, withdraw." The first elder, Jiang Qi, led the peak masters of the other peaks and finally arrived. However, Xiao Qin did not see Song Quebec. However, when he thought about it, it made sense. Song Ke only had 1 arm now. He was no longer a peak martial king. The hundreds of martial kings that had gathered earlier quickly retreated to the side and watched from a distance. Even they could not participate in this battle. When Jiang Qi saw the attire of the 7, his expression turned grave. He said slowly, "My Heavenly Saber Pavilion does not seem to have any grudges with you. Why are you here at my Heavenly Saber Pavilion?" The leader of the 7 took a few steps forward in the air and said, "We are the Eastern Sea Divine Dragon Palace's 7 sage envoys under the Dragon King. I am Long Tuesday. We are here to borrow something from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion." Jiang Qi had already guessed what they were here for. However, he still said coldly, "Is this the attitude you have when you want to borrow something? Big brother, don't bother speaking nonsense with him. They are just a bunch of half-step martial monarchs. Why bother with them? Just kill them. What is the Heavenly Saber Pavilion? How dare they compare themselves to our Divine Dragon Palace?" The person who made a move earlier said ruthlessly as a vicious look flashed in his eyes. Long Tu smiled gently and ignored this person's words. He looked at Jiang Qi and said, "My apologies, my 7th brother's temper has always been bad." His words were a little harsh. "I'm sorry, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion has too many restrictions. We had no choice but to forcefully break through. As long as you are willing to lend us the item, I am willing to compensate the Heavenly Saber Pavilion tenfold for all the losses." Jiang Qi said sullenly, "If you want to borrow the divine weapon, you can scram now. I will only say this once. If you leave now, I can pretend nothing happened. Don't think that you can do whatever you want in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion just because you are an inferior grade martial monarch." When Long Tu heard this, his expression turned cold. He said, "Since ancient times, the divine weapon belongs to those who are capable. Today, my Dragon King has taken a liking to this divine weapon. I will say this only once. Obediently hand over the divine weapon. Otherwise, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's 10,000 years of foundation will be destroyed." The 7th of the Divine Dragon Palace's 7 sage envoys smiled coldly and said, "Just a few half-step martial monarchs and you dare to say that you can keep us here? Do you not know how the word death is written? Old man, I will start with you." Boom! Just as he was about to make his move, 7 scarlet warships suddenly flew over from all directions. The scarlet flags on the bow of the warships fluttered in the night sky. The scarlet flags were as beautiful as fresh blood, even the night could not hide them. Instead, the dark night made the scarlet flags look even more bewitching. A person stood under each of the flags. They wore scarlet battle armor and had a scarlet cape draped over their shoulders. A scarlet bloodsucker saber hung at their waists. They did not hide their killing chi at all. 7 waves of killing chi soared into the sky and merged together, forming a vast sea. At some point in time, the dark clouds above had been dyed scarlet like blood. The terrifying murderous aura was almost tangible. From time to time, the cries of ghosts and howls of wolves could be heard coming from the blood clouds. The people from the divine saber camp had arrived. For the first time, the expressions of the 7 people from the divine dragon palace turned grave. Xiao! Xiao! The figures on the bow of the warships turned into 7 beams of scarlet light and arrived behind the first elder, Jiang Qi, at lightning speed. The divine saber camp's first commander, Shimaning, nodded slightly to Jiang Qi. He said softly, "The divine saber camp's Shimaning arrived late and caused the heavenly saber pavilion to suffer losses." Jiang Qi said indifferently, "It does not matter. It is good that you are here." When Long Tu saw the horrifying baleful aura of the 7 people, he was astonished. So, they are cultivators who use killing to prove their Tao. Could it be that they would cause others to feel fear? However, only 2 of them were martial monarchs. The other 5 were only half-step martial monarchs, so there was nothing to fear. Long Tu said sullenly, "The 6 of you, go and get the divine weapons. I will block them." The other 6 people were very confident in Long Tu's strength. They did not hesitate and immediately headed for the summit of Qingyun Peak. Jiang Qi's expression turned grave as he said anxiously, "Block them." The many martial kings who were watching from the side immediately rushed forward and charged at the 6 people. All sorts of high-ranked martial techniques gave off resplendent lights in the sky, surging forward. The 6 people each sent out a palm strike and an azure flood dragon appeared. The 6 flood dragons roared ferociously and crushed all the strong martial techniques flying at them into the air. After that, the blue dragon's might did not decrease. As it moved, it swept away dozens of martial kings. Then, it flew into the distance like a cannonball. Boom! The few martial kings were knocked back 2,000 meters. Their bodies crashed into a mountain peak and there were a few loud sounds. The mountain peak immediately collapsed. The 6 of them only used one move to easily knock back dozens of superior-grade martial kings. After they withdrew their attacks, the blue dragon roared and returned to their bodies. So. 7 scarlet warships quickly flew towards the 6 people. 100 divine saber camp elite disciples jumped off the warships and formed a 3-dimensional formation in the air. At the same time, they drew their bloodsucker sabers and roared ferociously. All their killing chi merged into one. Chapter 343. As the 6 martial monarchs moved in the formation, they immediately felt a huge pressure. Even though they had killed countless people in their lives, they still felt fear in their hearts. Furthermore, the formation of these 100 divine saber camp disciples seemed to follow some sort of natural law, suppressing the strength of the 6 martial monarchs. The 6 martial monarchs charged around in the formation. Their horrifying strength was unstoppable. However, they strangely discovered that even though they were moving forward, they were moving in circles. They were unable to break through the encirclement of these 100 martial monarchs. Long Tu took a glance and ignored the situation. With the strength of the 6 of them, it was only a matter of time before they broke through this formation. The true threat came from the 7 people before them, especially the 2 inferior-grade martial monarchs. They were the Divine Saber Camp's deputy commander, Shimaning, and Zhuoyan. Jiang Qi and the others had already retreated far away. With their strength as half-step martial monarchs, they could barely participate in this battle. However, the Divine Saber Camp was very particular about cooperation. What they learned was completely different from what they learned. They could not participate in the battle at all. They could only watch from the sidelines, just in case. Kill. The 7 of them attacked at the same time. The bloodsucker sabers in their hands released a scarlet light. Boundless scarlet clouds started churning in the sky. A sinister wind blew, and a baleful aura pressed down. Long Two flipped his palm and a purple spear appeared in his hand. He swung it gently and ripples appeared in the air. An azure flood dragon coiled around the spear. The flood dragon opened its mouth and roared ferociously. It swung the spear 4 times in the air and blocked all the attacks of the 7. Hoo-chee! Hoo-chee! The weapons clashed and a horrifying energy spread out. Black cracks appeared in space. The few of them casually waved their hands and tore space apart. The black cracks extended for several kilometers before stopping. Everywhere the cracks passed, mountains were chopped in half. From the sky, it looked like a biscuit that was bitten off by a dog. The few of them fought in the air faster and faster. Xiao Chen's eyes could not keep up with their speed. He could only hear deafening roars. Bang! On the battlefield, a streak of blood-red light was sent flying backward. A fist-sized hole appeared on the forehead of a divine saber camp cultivator. He had been stabbed to death by Long Two's spear. A moment later, cracks spread from his wounds, and his body was quickly torn into pieces. Ha! Again! The divine saber camp is only so-so. Lanta raised his head to the sky and laughed heartily. As his voice rang out, another spear swept out. The purple spear seemed to have come to life. It turned into a blue dragon and swept out wildly. A divine saber camp disciple sent out a scarlet light that connected heaven and earth, trying to block this horrifying attack. Before the azure flood dragon even got close, it let out a furious roar that contained boundless holy might, shaking this person to the point where he felt dizzy and his legs went weak. Bang! In the next moment, the green flood dragon turned back into a hard purple spear. A dot of purple light appeared on the tip of the spear. Long Two tilted his body slightly and pushed his hand forward, shattering the blood-colored light with lightning speed. This person quickly turned around and retreated. His speed was comparable to that of scarlet lightning. Long Two snorted coldly and swung his spear forward. His right hand grasped the tip of the spear. The range of the attack immediately increased significantly. With a horizontal swing, the spear struck this person's chest. This person vomited a mouthful of blood and flew back. He did not have time to control his direction and crashed into the spreading spatial cracks. This person could not resist at all and was cut into pieces by the spatial cracks. At the same time, the sharp attacks of the other 5 people filled the sky with scarlet light. The horrifying killing moves containing the state of massacre flew at Lantu. Soaring dragon. Long Two pulled back his spear and shouted. Suddenly, 9 azure flood dragons flew out of his body. As the 9 dragons soared, a supreme will of wind was contained in the azure flood dragons. Bang! 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 The flood dragon roared furiously, and the will of wind sprayed out, stirring up a gale and blowing away the torrential state of massacre. No matter how strong the state of massacre was, it was just a state in the end. It was not a match for a higher-leveled state unless the people of the divine saber camp comprehended the state of massacre. As the 9 dragons soared, the berserk energy contained a power that could destroy heaven and earth. It forced everyone back. This was especially so since the state was broken. The might of the killing move was greatly reduced, there was no rebound at all. Long Two laughed maniacally and the 9 dragons returned to his body. His figure flashed and he arrived before a divine saber camp cultivator. He thrust his spear forward and a black hole appeared in the air. The power of this spear was very berserk, it directly pierced through space. The supreme will of wind started to spread out from the tip of the spear. A fist-sized black hole immediately spread out. Long Two's figure flashed and he entered the spatial crack. In the next moment, a crack appeared in front of the retreating cultivator. A spear carrying an unparalleled force suddenly appeared from the void and pierced towards the cultivator's forehead. This spear came out of nowhere without any warning. There was no way to defend against it. It was a sure-hit attack. Dang! Just as the spear was about to pierce through the cultivator's forehead, a scarlet saber flashed from the side. The saber struck the tip of the spear. However, the will of wind on the tip of the spear prevented it from moving at all. Shiman Ying's chaotic and unfocused eyes suddenly focused. 2 crimson dots appeared in his eyes, making him look extremely strange. The horrifying state of massacre on the saber started to increase rapidly. Finally, it exploded and formed a strand of will of massacre. Boom! The horrifying spear was finally knocked away. That cultivator took advantage of this opportunity to quickly retreat. Long Tu grasped the handle of his spear and slowly emerged from the spatial crack. He looked at Shiman Ying and smiled faintly. Not bad. You actually managed to evolve the state of massacre into the will of massacre. However, it is just a strand. Let's see how you are going to block my will of wind. Ha! Long Tu's spear swept out and a purple light burst out from the tip. Strands of purple wind blades appeared and tore cracks in space. Everywhere the wind blades passed, the cracks extended continuously. The pitch-black cracks were like a flower blooming, a horrifying flower filled with the power of death. Shiman Ying had a grave expression. He did not say anything. His scarlet pupils released a strange light. He brandished his saber and knocked back the purple wind blades. Countless wind blades were sent flying, creating long black spatial cracks in the air. Many of the idle martial kings in the air could not dodge in time and were immediately cut in half by the spatial cracks. The power of the spatial cracks was not something an ordinary martial king could deal with. However, the force of the wind blades was too strong. Every time he knocked back a strand, Shiman Ying immediately moved back 100 meters. His complexion also turned increasingly pale. When the Divine Saber Camp's deputy commander Zhuo Yan saw that Shiman Ying was in a dangerous situation, he quickly flew over and worked together to knock back the scarlet wind blades. Long Tu laughed loudly and a purple flood dragon appeared on his spear. He charged at the 2 of them quickly before he ignored them. Long Tu shifted his gaze to the other 3 half-step martial monarchs of the Divine Saber Camp. He casually tore and a spatial crack appeared. Then, his figure flashed out. Bang! 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 Long Tu executed the shocking spear strike that contained the will of Berserk Wind 3 times in a row. The 3 half-step martial monarchs had condensed their state of massacre to its limits. However, there was a natural difference between states and wills. They could not move the spear at all. Furthermore, Long Tu hid himself in the spatial crack. No matter where he hid, he would always appear beside them. Be it behind, to the left, to the right, or even to the front, he would thrust his spear at them. Bloody holes appeared in the heads of the 3 half-step martial monarchs with this shocking spear strike. They could not be any more dead. At this moment, Shiman Ying and Zhuo Yan were still fighting against the soaring green flood dragon. The flood dragon was 100 meters long and its green scales were crisscrossed. Both of its eyes flashed with spiritual light as if it was a real flood dragon. The flood dragon roared ferociously as it wantonly flew in the air. As its dragon claws tore, it left thin cracks in space. Occasionally, it would spit out strands of azure dragon flame. Shiman Ying and Zhuo Yan turned into 2 beams of scarlet light. As they dodged the flood dragon's attacks, they left wounds on its body. When the saber technique containing the state of massacre struck the flood dragon, the wounds would not heal. The flood dragon's figure slowly faded. It would not be able to last much longer. After Long Tu dealt with the 3 half-step martial monarchs, he looked around and saw that the azure flood dragon was about to run out of energy. His expression did not change as he swung his spear through the air. A purple light gathered at the tip of the spear, and a long spatial crack appeared. Long Tu turned around and disappeared into the night sky. Shiman Ying and Zhuo Yan, who had dealt with the azure flood dragon, did not have time to catch their breaths. Suddenly, a crack appeared above their heads. A purple spear containing a strong will of wind exploded in the air, descending towards the 2 of them. Dang! Shimaning and Zhuo Yan quickly moved to the side. They crossed their scarlet sabers in the air and blocked the spear strike that could split mountains. Long Tu's figure emerged from the spatial crack. He laughed loudly and shouted, "You are like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You think you can block it?" Scram! Long Tu's right hand, which was holding the spear, exerted some force. A purple light spread out from the tip of the spear. Instantly, the flood dragon carved on the spear glowed brightly. The will of wind became even more berserk. Bang! Shimaning and Zhuo Yan both vomited a mouthful of blood. The bloodsucker sabers in their hands could not withstand the force. They flew out of their hands and fell to the ground. Scram! With a roar, Long Tu's figure rapidly leaped forward. The space beneath his feet was like flat ground. Every step he took left a purple footprint in the air. Long Tu brandished his spear and struck Shimaning, Zhuo Yan, and Zhuo Yan's chest. Their bodies flew backward and crashed into a mountain a kilometer away, destroying half of it. When Xiaochen saw all this, horror filled his eyes. At the same time, he was filled with doubt. They were all martial monarchs, but why was Long Tu able to beat the other martial monarchs to the point where they could not retaliate? Chapter 344. With a casual move, he could easily tear space apart. When his spear swept out, there was no way to block it. As for those half-step martial monarchs, they were as simple as slaughtering dogs. One spear for one, without any hesitation. Will. Suddenly, a light flashed in Xiao Chen's mind. He remembered what Long Tu said. This was because of the will. It was just like how a martial saint who comprehended a state could easily kill a martial saint who had not comprehended a state. To a martial monarch, the state could no longer keep up with the development of their strength. Only a higher level will could bring out the might of a martial monarch. Lu Rui's eyes filled with anxiety. Occasionally, she would look at the summit of Qingyun Peak. The summit was currently very calm, it was very peaceful. First Elder, should we call out those supreme elders? This Long Tu's will of wind has clearly reached great perfection. Shimaning and Zhuo Yan are not a match for him. Indeed, if we still do not call out those supreme elders, there will be no chance to turn the situation around. The peak masters of the main peaks said anxiously. Jiang Qi's expression turned grave. He ignored the words of these people. After a while, he shook his head and said, "The Divine Saber Camp still has not used their trump card. The enemies that the Supreme Elder wants to deal with are not these people. Let's wait and see." Boom! 2 scarlet lights shot up from the ground. Shimaning and Zhuo Yan started fighting again. So. The two of them stretched out their hands and the bloodsucker sabers immediately returned to their hands. The killing chi of the two of them spread out continuously. Their red cloaks fluttered in the air. The blood on their lips had not dried yet, but their faces were extremely pale. Long Tu looked at the two of them and smiled coldly. "You are at the end of the road, yet you are still putting on an act. Die." Xiaochen swung his spear in the air and disappeared into thin air again, appearing very mysterious. Peerless blood shadow. Shimaning and Zhuo Yan shouted and the sabers in their hands moved in an arc. A scarlet crescent moon appeared on the tip of their sabers. Xiao Chen's gaze turned grave as he looked carefully. Back then, Murong Chang's peerless lunar shadow was born from this peerless blood shadow. Now that he had executed the original martial technique, its might should not be weak. However, it was hard to say whether it would be able to injure Long Tuesday. Long Tu was in the void, and there was no way to track him. After executing the move, their pale faces turned even paler, without the slightest hint of blood. The 2 blood-colored crescent moons whistled through the air, but they disappeared in a flash and actually entered the void. Poochie! In the void, there was a violent explosion. A pitch-black hole was torn open, and a red light shone out. Bang! The instant the red light shone, the spatial crack rapidly expanded. A red full moon broke through the space and leaped out. In an instant, the scarlet light illuminated the entire Lingyun mountain range. The cultivators with better vision could see an azure figure moving quickly in the black hole in the sky. If they looked carefully, they would discover a trace of blood leaking out of the corner of his mouth. Xiaochen exclaimed in shock, "Peerless blood shadow." Unexpectedly, not only did it stop Long Tu's attack, but it even injured him. The black hole quickly closed. The instant it completely closed, a resplendent purple light appeared out of nowhere in the sky. Long Tu was about to break through space and come out. Shimen Ying and Zhuoyan's gazes were like lightning. The instant the purple light appeared, they quickly formed hand seals. Strands of perception locked onto each other. Long Tu's figure had just appeared when the scarlet full moon in the sky charged at him with a startling state of massacre. The speed of the full moon reached its peak. Everywhere it passed, space turned blurry and ripples appeared. Bang! Long Tu did not have any chance to dodge. His face filled with shock. The tip of his spear shone brightly as he thrust it forward, wanting to shatter this scarlet moon. However, the energy contained within this full moon was simply too vast. The two of them exhausted their essence and forcefully condensed their states into strands of will, infusing them into the full moon. Such a secret technique that forcefully raised one's state would have severe side effects on the body. However, at this moment, they could not care so much. Unexpectedly, Long Tu's successful will of wind could not block this move. His body was instantly covered by the scarlet moon as he crashed heavily into the ground. Rumble. 1,000-meter-wide pit immediately appeared at the foot of Qingyun Peak. Dust flew into the air and a huge force spread out. The entire Qingyun Peak started to shake violently. It was easy to imagine how terrifying this power was to be able to shake an entire mountain. Shimen Ying's complexion paled. He could not help but vomit another mouthful of blood. He ignored his injuries and said coldly, "Attack." Right after he spoke, the 7 scarlet warships in the sky released a scarlet pillar of light that soared into the sky, connecting with the scarlet clouds in the sky. The trump card of the divine saber camp was finally going to be revealed. The endless red clouds began to tumble and surge, becoming brighter and brighter, as if blood was flowing through them. In an instant, a horrifying state of massacre spread throughout the entire Lingyun mountain range. It caused all the cultivators present to tremble. At the same time, the martial kings of the various noble clans in the Shiha province all felt this aura. They all soared into the sky and looked at the boundless scarlet clouds in the direction of the heavenly saber pavilion. Their expressions all changed. What's going on? The divine saber camp's heavenly profound blood-slaughtering formation has been executed. What's happening in the heavenly saber pavilion? I have not seen the divine saber camp for hundreds of years. Now, they are making a move. What is going on? Many figures gathered in the sky. They could not resist the curiosity in their hearts as they quickly flew towards the heavenly saber pavilion. The great Qin nation's imperial capital, where everyone was preparing to sleep in the middle of the night, suddenly discovered 10 huge golden warships had appeared in the sky at an unknown time. They were flying quickly to the west. A golden flag fluttered on the bow of the warships. There were 9 golden dragons embroidered on the flag, and the word Qin was written in the center. Among the 10 warships, there was one that was especially huge. It was 1,000 meters long and 100 meters wide. Golden talisman scripts flickered around the hull of the warship. There was a person standing on the bow of the warship. He was 7 meters tall and looked very energetic. His aura was like a rainbow as he soared into the sky. The light he gave off was so dazzling that it seemed like it lit up the night sky. This was the leader of the Imperial Dragon Legion, the leader of the 10 martial monarchs of the great Qin nation, the Nangong clan's clan head, Nangong Lai. The entire Imperial Dragon Legion actually turned out in full force. In a secret room 1,000 meters below the imperial capital's imperial palace, an old man with white hair and beard suddenly opened his eyes. A golden light flashed, as though he could see through the essence of this world. It is actually the people of the boundless sea. Ha ha. However, is the divine weapon really that easy to obtain? If it were so easy, this old man would have made a move long ago. How foolish. After a while, the golden light scattered and the old man closed his eyes again, ignoring him. Long Tu slowly stood up in a deep pit at the foot of the heavenly saber pavilion's Qingyun peak. His azure robes were already in tatters. His hair was disheveled, and blood leaked out of the corner of his mouth. He was in a sorry state. Ha 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 ha. Good. Very good. You actually managed to injure me. It looks like you are seeking your own death today. I want the divine weapon. I will kill everyone in the heavenly saber pavilion, not leaving a single person alive. Long Tu looked at the boundless churning scarlet clouds above him and wiped the blood off his lips. Then, he laughed maniacally. Long Tu's aura soared continuously. A horrifying might spread out into the surroundings without any concealment. His aura did not stop growing until it reached peak superior grade martial monarch. When the might of a martial monarch spread out, the grass grew stiff and the trees broke from the ground. The boundless aura crushed them into dust. Several heavenly saber pavilion disciples vomited a mouthful of blood under this horrifying might and fainted. Unexpectedly, this Long Tu was a peak superior grade martial monarch. When everyone saw this, their expressions changed greatly. When the first elder, Jiang Qi, saw Long Tu unleash his full aura, his expression changed slightly. He had not expected Long Tu to be a peak superior grade martial monarch. What should we do now? Long Tu is actually a peak superior grade martial monarch. First elder, get the supreme elders out. Otherwise, the heavenly saber pavilion will suffer great losses, the people at the side said in unison. Jiang Qi's gaze was deep as he looked into the distance. There were countless experts from various places watching from a distance. Jiang Qi withdrew his gaze and shook his head. We can't do it yet. Let's hold on for a while. Let's see if the heavenly profound blood-slaughtering formation can suppress him. Suddenly, the boundless scarlet clouds in the sky started churning very quickly. After a while, a blurry face formed in the scarlet clouds. Only half of the face appeared, the other half merged with the scarlet clouds. A huge scarlet hand suddenly appeared. The palm of the scarlet hand was the size of a small mountain, and half of the arm was over 1,000 meters long. It smashed towards Long Tu, who was on the ground with a soaring aura. Long Tu's expression turned grave. Although he was arrogant, he was not a fool. When the huge hand landed, his figure flashed and quickly retreated. Bang! The scarlet hand left a huge handprint on the ground. The outline of the 5 fingers was very clear. The deepest part of the handprint was more than 100 meters deep. Hu Qi. The scarlet hand gently raised its hand and used the back of its huge hand to move towards Long Tuesday. Long Tu moved like lightning, moving quickly in the air. Bang! The back of the scarlet hand gently touched a desolate mountain. Half of the mountain immediately turned into powder, and half of the mountain was gone. With such a huge force, no wonder Long Tu did not dare to clash head-on. Instead, he chose to avoid it. The scarlet hand was like a human arm. When it moved, it was incredibly fast. It was no slower than Long Tu, who had comprehended the will of wind. Furthermore, under the suppression of the heavenly profound blood-slaughtering formation, the baleful aura in the air affected Long Tu's speed. He could not shake off the scarlet hand. A purple light appeared on the tip of the spear, and Long Tu tore open a spatial tear in the air. When the spatial tear closed, he entered it. Long Tu hid in the spatial tear, and he immediately disappeared from the night sky. The blurry face on the scarlet clouds frowned slightly. Then, it roared. Although it was a roar, it was as intense as thunder. When it opened its mouth and breathed, it formed an intense tornado in the air. The huge scarlet hand pulled back slightly, and its 5 fingers clenched the air. In that instant, a spatial tear appeared, and half of the arm entered it. Chapter 345. Bang! 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 Loud sounds came from the spatial crack. An intense shockwave exploded in the air. Many black cracks appeared out of nowhere, spreading out like black streams in the air. Long Tu tore open a spatial crack and quickly emerged from it. His expression turned even more grave. Clearly, he had not expected this scarlet hand to be so difficult to deal with. The instant Long Tu emerged, he suddenly felt a chill on his face. When he turned his head back, he saw a huge scarlet hand crashing into him. It was the scarlet giant's hidden second arm. It shot out at lightning speed and opened its huge hand, grabbing Long Tu in an instant. The huge hand grabbed Long Tu's body and smashed him into the ground. It did not stop at all, causing the entire Lingyun mountain range to shake. Some of the old buildings could not withstand this force and collapsed. Countless cracks appeared on the ground, spreading out in all directions. The mountain peaks were directly blasted apart by the cracks, forming a huge crack in the sky from the center. Did he succeed? He was caught. With such horrifying force, he should have been smashed into meat paste, a few elders said joyfully. Jiang Qi shook his head slightly. He could sense that the other party's aura had not weakened at all. Instead, it had become even more vigorous. Pa! The other scarlet hand also emerged from the void. Then, the two palms clapped ferociously. When the two palms merged, they had the strength to smash a small mountain into powder. When the two palms merged, even if the other party was an impregnable fortress, he should have been smashed into meat paste. Boom! Right after the palms clapped, an even more intense sound rang out. It was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing everyone's eardrums to burn and their internal organs to tremble. The sky was filled with bloody light exploding. Specks of bloody light sprinkled on the ground like raindrops. The two huge bloody hands were completely blown to pieces. 9 azure flood dragons circled around Long Tuesday. He smiled coldly and said, "Is that all you have? The heavenly profound blood-slaughtering formation is only a so-so. Ha ha ha. Watch me break this formation." It turned out that Long Tu had not made a move all this while because he wanted to test the limits of the scarlet hands. Now that he knew their limits, he no longer feared them. Hu Qi. Without the interference of the huge scarlet hand, Long Tu's speed completely recovered. He was so fast that the human eye could not even react to it. In the eyes of a regular cultivator, it was like teleportation. Shaochen brandished his spear, and 9 azure flood dragons circled around and roared. Then, he headed for one of the scarlet warships. A scarlet light descended from the sky and enveloped the scarlet warship, forming a thick, solid scarlet light. Break! Long Tu roared, and 9 azure flood dragons merged into the spear. The purple spear immediately lit up with a resplendent, fiery light. It was like a purple sun in the night sky, so bright that no one dared to look at it directly. Xiao Chen's figure instantly vanished. A moment later, a huge, bloody hole appeared in the blood-colored pillar of light. The pillar of light shattered, and the blood-colored warship inside broke in half and fell to the ground. Break, 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 break! Long Tu roared 6 times. His figure appeared and disappeared unpredictably in the void. His dazzling purple spear carried a destructive force as it pierced through the 7 blood-colored warships in an instant. No matter how powerful your magic skills are, how profound your formations are, or how vast your killing chi is, I only need to use one spear to stab you. I will use absolute strength to form an overwhelming attack. After the 7 warships were destroyed, the boundless scarlet clouds in the sky immediately dimmed. The scarlet giant sighed and slowly faded from the sky. Ha 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 ha. The heavenly saber pavilion is so useless, yet you dare to speak such arrogant words, looking down on the divine dragon palace. What other abilities do you have? Bring them all out. I, Long Tu, will break them with one spear. After destroying the 7 warships, Long Tu laughed maniacally. His voice was like rushing thunder, resounding everywhere. The entire heavenly saber pavilion could hear this arrogant voice. Such humiliation caused the blood of the heavenly saber pavilion disciples to surge. As one of the 3 great sects, when had they ever been humiliated like this? However, even though they were hot-blooded, they did not have the strength to back it up. They could only feel sullen in their hearts. After the heavenly profound blood-slaughtering formation was broken, the 100 elite divine saber camp disciples surrounding the other 6 sage envoys immediately showed flaws in their formation. The 6 sage envoys grasped the flaws and used their strength to charge around. In an instant, they broke through the encirclement of the 100 divine saber camp disciples. Most of the disciples died from severe injuries. "Big brother, do you need our help? Let's just destroy the heavenly saber pavilion together," the 7th sage envoy of the divine dragon palace said coldly, his eyes filled with hostility. Long Tu said indifferently, "There's no need. The 6 of you go and retrieve the divine weapon. That side is the main point. I can handle this alone." The 6 of them nodded and immediately rushed to the top of Qingyun Peak at lightning speed. When the peak masters and elders saw this, they said anxiously, "First elder, if the supreme elder still does not come out and the divine weapon is stolen, the heavenly saber pavilion will perish." The first elder had a resolute gaze as he said sullenly, "It is not time yet. The true enemy has not appeared yet." Boom! 2 figures soared into the sky from the ground. It was Shimaning and Zhuoyan. They rushed over again and blocked Long Tu, who was preparing to destroy the heaven viewing platform's main hull. Dang! 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 The 2 of them gave off a red light and their eyes turned scarlet. Their strength increased wildly. They had actually used the minor heavenly demon body separating technique, which burned their life force. Their state of massacre was forcibly raised to the state of massacre. Their cultivation also soared to peak medial grade martial monarch. When the 2 of them worked together, they managed to block Long Tu's surging attacks. "How dare you clash with the righteous sects with unorthodox sects?" Long Tu snorted coldly. His spear sent out blurry spear images, like countless azure flood dragons roaring in the air. Even though the 2 of them executed the minor heavenly demon body separating technique, they could only hold on bitterly. This Long Tu was a peak superior grade martial monarch, only a step shy of becoming a martial sage. He was simply too strong. Unless a martial sage appeared, no one could defeat him. Pooh! The 6 azure-robed sage envoys landed firmly on the summit of Qingyun Peak. Lu Tianyu sat cross-legged on a rock at the summit. His wrinkled face opened slightly when he felt the 6 of them land. His gaze was calm, he looked like an old man with a serene expression. A wooden box stood quietly beside him. The words, "like the emperor descending personally," were carved on it. The 7th of the 7 sage envoys cursed, "Pfft. I was wondering who the person guarding the divine weapon was. It turns out that it is just a cripple with a shattered martial spirit. Old man, hand over the divine weapon, and this Lord 7 will not make things difficult for you. I will send you on your way and not let you feel any pain. Otherwise, hee. Pooh ci. The 4 wooden boards on the wooden box shattered and fell to the ground. The divine weapon, the heavenly universe saber, floated quietly in the air. Lu Tianyu stretched out his hand and grasped the hilt of the divine weapon, the heavenly universe saber. His calm gaze suddenly lit up, and his aura soared into the sky. In an instant, he revealed his sharpness. With a ka-ca sound, the divine weapon was unsheathed. A dazzling light dazzled the eyes of the 6. A saber light flashed by. Before the 7th of the 7 sage envoys could finish speaking, a bloody wound appeared on his neck. His head flew into the air. He died without knowing why, there was no pain at all. The other 6 were astonished. When they saw the unsheathed divine weapon, they fled for their lives. They were shocked. Didn't the Dragon King say that the divine weapon could not be completely unsheathed? How did this old man manage to completely unsheath the divine weapon? This was completely beyond their expectations. The might of the divine weapon could even kill a martial sage. They were only martial monarchs. How could they dare to be impudent? They used all their means to flee. Long Tu, who was suppressing Shimaning and Lu Tianyu, changed his expression. He forced the 2 back with one move. Then, he moved as fast as lightning, heading for the summit. In the blink of an eye, Long Tu arrived at the summit of Qingyun Peak. When he saw the unsheathed divine weapon, he revealed an expression of shock. Xiao. Lu Tianyu remained expressionless as he watched Long Tu fly over. He gently brandished the Heavenly Universe divine weapon, and a simple resplendent saber chi flew at Long Tu's chi. Chi. Everywhere the saber chi passed, space was sliced in half. The empty space was like a piece of tofu, sliced in half from the middle. Long Tu's expression changed drastically. This was no longer a power that he could control. Even if he used his full power, he could only tear a crack in space. If he were to view space as a rock, he could make a crack on the rock, but the other party could easily cut the rock in half like tofu. The will of the divine weapon had already locked onto Long Tuesday. He had no chance to dodge this saber strike. Ha! The purple spear lit up with a resplendent light. A crescent-shaped azure energy appeared. The will of wind in the energy was condensed to the extreme. Countless cracks appeared in the void. Long Tu used all his strength to block this move. Pu Ci. There was no earth-shaking sound or overwhelming energy fluctuation. That strand of saber chi that sliced through space easily destroyed Long Tu's full-powered strike. At the critical moment, a jade pendant on Long Tu's chest burst out with a bright light. It emitted a solid light barrier that encased him. It was not strange for a martial monarch expert to have one or two life-saving secret treasures. Bang! The light barrier instantly shattered, and the jade pendant on Long Tu's chest shattered into tiny pieces. Blood leaked out of the corner of his mouth as he flew back a kilometer. The sharp saber chi did not lose any momentum. It flew quickly towards the horizon, flying all the way to the distant starry heavens before disappearing from everyone's sight. Big brother, are you all right? Long Tu asked anxiously as the other 6 caught hold of him in midair. The 6th of the 7 sage envoys said, Big brother, are we still going to retrieve the divine weapon? 7th brother is already dead. The situation had changed too quickly. Just a moment ago, Long Tu was still in high spirits, wanting to sweep through the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Now, he was easily defeated with one saber strike and severely injured. Ka Xie. At the summit of Qingyun Peak, Lu Tianyu still sat cross-legged on the rock. His body did not move at all, and his expression was calm. The divine weapon returned to its scabbard with a huang dang sound. The first elder, Jiang Qi, had a suspicious expression. He could not understand how Lu Tianyu managed to draw the divine weapon. Boom!